Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. See if anybody can hear me in the chat. We are going live right now. If you can hear me, yo, put one in the chat. Christian, what's going on, bro? All right. I see we have people coming early. Rain Woman, how are you doing? JBA, Mega Montana, what's going on, bro? Complex, what's going on, dude? Terrence Forrest, what's going on, man? Ronan Black, peace, brother, peace, man. We got to get the BAIO on the hangout one of these nights, man. You, Richard Dixon, a couple other guys, man. That'd be dope to get you guys on. We can really chop up some serious game. Yeah, hit the like button, man. Hit the like button, share the video if possible, man. And this is an open panel, man, so anybody can get on the panel tonight. No restrictions. At least, nothing inflammatory. Don't come on here talking any drunk stuff, man. Yeah, I'm sorry for the dead silence, man. I just got distracted by the other phone. But yeah, open chat. Everybody can jump on here. We can chill. We can just chop up some game. I know the title says manufacturing masculinity. That should be the guiding focus of the discussion scope. So yeah, Black Brain Trust is actually doing fairly well. We're approaching 1,700 subscribers. We should have that by the end of the night tonight. I think we were about 30 or something off, something like that. So probably by the end of tonight, we'll probably hit 1,700. We're projected to hit 2,000 by the end of the summer. Looking at the statistics and numbers and growth, so we're doing fairly well. I know August 1st is a big crucial date for a lot of people in the manosphere, but we're not worried. Our content speaks for itself. We don't really have too many issues with people doxing us and stuff like that. We don't have those issues over here. We're chilling, man. We're just putting out content that's going to be beneficial for people, man. So many people have emailed me personally, emailed the Black Brain Trust channel, and have stated how great the content is and how beneficial it has been for them and how much money they've made off of some of the discussions that we've had. Dollar Will does his technical analysis. People have signed up for him. We've had people sign up for Lionel's blockchain study group. People are emailing me about mentorship. They're showing up to the cannabis hangouts, for business, wealth, and power. Dr. Yaya, it's been a while. How are you doing? Good evening to you. But yeah, man, we're everything's copacetic over here, man. We're good. We're real good. We ain't got beef with nobody. And if you want to get on the panel, just email the Black Brain Trust or stay state your claim in the chat, and you can definitely get on. Yeah, we had some new additions to the Black Brain Trust. You know, Gabe, and Dr. Phoenix. The truth is, I know it has come on the panel finally. Um, things are going well. Things are going well. Trey Waters, thank you for that. Thank you, brother. We've been trying to get AM1 on for a long time, man. He missed the hip hop as a science, the West Coast era, and he should have been a part of that. What's going on, Dr. Phoenix? Complex Design, what's going on, bro?
Chilling, man.
You got
What's going on, dude?
practice?
No, not today, man.
Okay.
Nah, today I'm just kind of chilling out a little bit. Actually, man, I've been getting a lot of cart-related business. Like I said, I'm trying to get things revived for 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So, been putting some stuff together. Spent a lot of time on the phone today, man. Just putting some stuff together. Gonna try to get involved with a couple of winter series. I figured by around winter time, I should kind of have my stuff together. I need to go get stuff from the shop and bring it up to where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to run over in the local areas. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's been kind of spent a good part of the day working on that, and then got some real good news on the hemp and cannabis side. Not to put too much out there, but there's a brother who been coming to the hemp and cannabis hangouts for some time, and he applied for the hemp program in his state and got approved. So now we're going to be working with him on some key aspects of what his program is going to be about. So pretty exciting, man. Just found out about that like late last night. So I talked with him earlier this morning. So just, man, a lot of good stuff, man, coming out of what we do, man. Just to follow up on what you were saying there. There really is very real things that are being born out of our discussions for people that are listening. Again, we spend maybe 2 to 3 hours, a day doing the hangouts when we have them scheduled, or even like the open chats. They usually run, tops maybe like 3 hours or something. And that's all the content we really produce for the most part. Most of this stuff funnels into like projects that are offline. And that's the key thing to realize here is that, we talk about a lot of these things, but then there's a lot of things that we're engaged in that are directly related to what we're discussing. So yeah, man, and we're an open platform. So just like the hangouts are open, we're a co-op. We also have a very, loose business environment too, where people who want to get involved. I guess another brother that frequents hang out. I spoke with him. I think it was Saturday. We talked for a good bit Saturday morning about like some, not to get into too many details, but some robotics stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, it's a proof of concept, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that we got going on here.
Yeah, definitely. Subscriber numbers have been pretty steady, pretty good. We getting a lot of turnout. The last open chat we had 130 people in the chat, man. So it was definitely lit, man. So yeah, things are going well. So with that being said, house cleaning out the way, man. Let's talk about manufacturing masculinity. I was hoping that Dr. Phoenix would be on here, and maybe even Truth as I Know It.
I'm pretty sure Dr. Phoenix will hop on
Mm-hmm.
in a bit. There he is. He just popped up in the chat there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he's working doubles or something like that.
Oh, okay. If he's working, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
You know, I think he does like 312 or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, manufacturing masculinity. Why did we, why was this topic selected, man? It's not really a topic, man. Open chats are usually just supposed to be anything, that the subscribers want to talk about, man. They can just kind of jump on the panel and just talk.
Yeah. I mean, what's your take on that in terms of
Man,
manufacturing it?
yeah, manufacturing masculinity.
Hmm.
It, the issue that I see here is that how black people articulate masculinity is different than how other groups of people within the same country, within the same state, the same city, same zip codes register masculinity.
Hmm.
And what I notice is that for black men, the construct of masculinity is so abnormal from what everybody else is doing that it just seems like we're manufacturing, the masculinity, right? The tattoos, the thick beards,
Yeah.
the obnoxious walk, right? The sagging of the pants, right? I see dudes with skinny jeans and still sagging their pants. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And also it has to do with a lot of money, right? So a lot of rappers in these videos today, what they consider to be hip hop, they're flashing money. They got the shiny watch. They got the fastest car or the fanciest car for that matter. Um, just a whole lot of additives that are not really and preservatives that are not really necessary for masculinity. So it's being manufactured, not just by outside forces, but by inside forces as well. You got a lot of this is being driven by people who have a vested interest in this sexually.
Yeah.
So people are pushing this sort of campaign that in order to be um, an alpha male, right? There's this idea that you have to be this big bravado. You have to wear your masculinity on your sleeve and have this chip on your shoulder. Nobody can't do nothing to you. Um, and when I see shows like the First 48, I always laugh because these guys are so big and bad in the streets, right? They always talk tough, they got the slang and they, what it do, and all this other stuff. But as soon as they get put in that interrogation room, head on the table,
Like,
looking sour, man. Looking
well, that's exactly what it is. It's manufactured masculinity, right? Because none of it actually holds any kind of weight, in terms of, the real workings of the world, right?
mm-hmm.
Okay, so like, and somebody was like, "What's wrong with what's wrong with beards?" Nothing's wrong with beards. I have one. It's just that like I don't have like no thick one. It's just basically my hair grows extremely thick in my face, so I always kind of have like a beard that's kind of close to my face. I don't really grow it out, but there's something about the thick beard look,
Mm-hmm.
because it is something that's more or less marketed to women, right? It's almost like a peacock, how it fans its feathers out,
Right.
right? To give the female, like, okay, look at my beautiful feathers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all of these things are they're more like they're signaling attributes. These aren't attributes of any sort of manhood that reflect your ability to be effective in the world, right? A big beard does nothing, right? Like in terms of a profession,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't actually make you better or more efficient, or more skilled at doing something. Okay, so to me, manhood and masculinity is these largely these things are reflective of your ability to produce something,
Right.
right? Either like to complete a task, to make something, to create something, to solve a problem. Okay, the bigger the problem, the more complex the problem, the bigger the creation. These are more reflective of like your ability to create something. That's completely separate from the appearance of masculinity or the manufacturing of it. the tight fitting pants, and not to say that fashion doesn't kind of have a place, because society has a tapestry, right? Like a modern day society has a tapestry to it, and so fashion is a part of that. Okay, but it's not to get so far into that the appearance of one is actually becomes a reflection of one's dude. Okay, that's just gone too far. Your masculinity is literally is a sign or a signal of your effectiveness as a male.
Hmm. What's going on, Dr. Phoenix?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, brothers?
Chilling, chilling.
I'm doing very well. I'm kind of at a conference now, so I'm kind of gonna be in and out. But
Hmm.
I'm glad. Thank you guys for inviting me to the open chat because I think tonight's discussion goes along with what I was just hearing over in the manosphere.
Hmm.
Uh, um, I think as we look at the lens of manufactured masculinity, I, I would say this much in that regard is that for black men,
Hmm.
typically we pay just speaking from the relative aspect of a social and physiological cost, we tend to pay that up front. So meaning that for black men, if you grow up and you didn't grow up in a nurturing home, a nurturing environment, so you didn't have a strong masculine presence in your father, for as we know, for most ADOS black males, the vast majority of us come from single mother households. So
Hmm.
again, most of us only passing semblance of a masculine figure that we see, might be an uncle, might be maybe one of the OGs you knew on the block or something like
Hmm.
that, or maybe a grandfather. But for most of us, those that masculine presence is fleeting. It comes and goes. It's not there. It's not consistently there. So again, so what happens that most of ADO as black males tend to grow up developing this codependence with women, and it starts with the mother. And typically it will carry over into their interpersonal relationships
Hmm.
between other black women and between other black men, to be honest, because again, when we get in these environments, a lot of black men tend to not get along, and a
Right.
lot of that comes from the fact that a lot of brothers, you know, there's just this testosterone thing going on. There's this chest thumping thing you have to do, and
Hmm.
so as we go through our lives, in particular in our teens and our 20s, typically these are some of the most dangerous areas for black men, and specifically ADOS. Obviously our Caribbean, our brothers in the diaspora as a whole, they typically don't have this problem. But for ADOS brothers, we have this problem because why? This is the period in your life where you start to see all these statistics come into play. The high mortality rates with inner city violence, high incarceration rates, high a lot of black men, believe it or not, we're starting to see in the healthcare sector, we're starting to see a lot of brothers dropping dead in their late teens and 20s from sudden heart attacks. Seemingly perfectly healthy, young black males, but are dropping dead. We're seeing this. We're seeing the increase in black men who are becoming diabetic in their teens and 20s and 30s. And so there's a social factor, there's also that physiological factor, but then there's the social factor of when you don't have that strong male presence, so you don't learn what it's like to be competitive as a man, so what it means to go out here in the world and to have to compete against other men and get accomplishments under your belt, because ultimately that's where your masculinity and your confidence is going to stem from
Yep.
as a man. It's from your ability to say, I've done XYZ in my life, I went through this, but then I came out on the other end of this and I was good.
Yep.
So you being able to rack up those accomplishments under your belt is what ultimately is going to give every man his confidence. And for most of the brothers that are ADOS, we don't typically do that. Now the diaspora brothers is obviously a bit different. But for the ADOS brothers, I mean, yeah, that's typically what happens with us. And so up front, early in our lives, we pay that social cost, that socioeconomic cost, because we're poorer. which means we're more likely to engage in sort of black market criminal activities that leads to the higher incarceration rates. Then we also, because of that black market activity, also puts us in conflict with other black men who in many cases we either end up hurting or unfortunately even killing in the process, which again leads to again one of the major causes of early of death in black men 18 to 35 is homicide. So so we're seeing that on top of the fact that we're paying the physiological cost, higher levels of stress, which also can contribute to development of high blood pressure, development of diabetes, because we have bad eating habits coupled with stress. It all plays a factor. On top of the fact that we're also dealing with the fact that most that black men as a whole, we're kind of forced in a way into an underground economy by virtue of our position within the society, because for the most part black men don't have a voice, which is why I believe the Black Brain Trust and the Manosphere to an extent. I put a big caveat because there's a lot of folks out there that are just kind of crazy, but why these spaces are important, especially for brothers, because again it gives brothers the ability to come out here to speak their truth, speak their piece. The Black Brain Trust, you guys are doing excellent work. Last night was a prime example when Mike was reading off the article of one of the brothers that was a subscriber, but he did that EDX course, and here this brother went from being literally a dishwasher, probably making like $7 or $8 an hour, to a man that's making 80 G's a year. And there's a lot of data and studies that correlates that once you start making 70 grand plus, not only do your quality of life change, but your outlook, the way you look at
Yep.
yourself in your life, also changes.
Yep.
So again, that raises that happiness quotient in your lives as black men, as we start to get those accomplishments. But more importantly, those accomplishments allow us to move into those higher socioeconomic levels.
But it's also very important just to note too that that won't be had, and I do want to acknowledge Paul. Hey, how you doing,
Hey, what's
brother?
going on, Paul Bryant?
Hey, brothers. Good evening.
Hey, Paul, I got your email, man. Everything is good, man. Everything's good.
Great to hear it, man. Great
Yeah,
to hear it.
everything's good out here. Just to speak to what Dr. Phoenix was just saying, you can't manufacture success. You can't manufacture accomplishments in life. And those they undergird, your not only your confidence but your competence as a man. So if you've been able to accomplish things, set out a goal, it's pretty lofty, and you are able to see some measure, some level of success, what it does is it affirms things. It affirms things for you, and it confirms things. Confirms it confirms what you know, right? Because you're applying what you know to what it is that you're pursuing, and then it affirms things, right? It affirms that it's an affirmation. Okay, so it sets a plateau, and once you hit that plateau, there's no going below that. You don't ever go below. Like if you have a down moment, you have a down moment pursuing a higher plateau. Like that's what your down moment is, actually you pursuing something higher than what it is that you've achieved. So even in that type of schism, it's not a down moment for you. It's nothing like that. So this is the reason why, more than anything, success and accomplishments or achieving goals in life are really what affirm, your manhood and masculinity. It's not it's not like the prima facie, the beard, the clothes, the tattoos,
The
the
colorful
this.
dreadlocks,
Yes, it's like all
the
of that. All of that is
Matt Albert jeans, the Dragon Ball Z's.
oh, that's all. That's just feathers on the peacock.
Mhm.
Can I just address something in the chat real quick? The brother Born to Reign. I, I understand what you mean by putting in 15-minute bites and subscribers with triple. I don't necessarily agree with that. However, this is the part of the problem when we're talking with black men. This is attention span. This is a this is a big damn problem, especially with the ADOS brothers. Our ability to maintain our discipline and attention for any given period of time. You know why we tend? You know why most black students, if you go to any you go to any university or college outside HBCUs, do you realize the black graduation rates are less than 20%? Meaning that one out of every five black students who goes to your typical PWI will graduate within a 5 to 6 year period, which means the vast majority of us that are going will not graduate. And part of what happens in college is the inability for us to be disciplined enough to sit in those hour lectures. Now, if you did something like what I did, I started out in nursing. You're in the baccalaureate program in nursing. You got 3 hour lectures. Every lecture is 3 hours. Period. And so our ability to our inability to maintain our focus on attention, that's something that does not involve sports or entertainment, is absolutely atrocious.
I
Hmm.
And
mean,
and,
yeah, I was gonna
and
say,
this is
Dr.
a
Venus, that's why
this
that
is a fundamental
entertainment thing
problem.
is, yeah, that's why that entertainment thing, I would say you need to find entertainment in your information.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like the things that inform you. There should be so. For example, Lionel and I were really big on like the YouTube channel Curious Droid. He's a dude who just he reports on like things that have occurred like throughout the history of like space exploration, stuff like that. But he has a shtick. All right, there's another channel I follow. He's the history guy, and he has a shtick that he does. It's entertaining, but it's extremely informative.
no,
So
I agree.
you have to raise your standards in terms of like the information you consume, right?
No,
Yeah. Oh, I'm just following up on a point that you were making.
no. You're absolutely correct, and I'll give you a prime example. Yesterday the brother Mike V talking about having coding for dummies. Do you know how many chemistry for dummies I got books? I got organic chem for dummies, biology for dummies. Why? Because I can't remember every damn thing I've
Dude,
learned over the years.
I
I can't.
had business for dummies. I had that
Yeah,
book.
I
Just
can't, but
basic
I
business for
enjoy
dummies.
learning this information.
But
On
that's
top of the
that's.
fact that every single day I watch at least 2 or 3 hours, or I ain't gonna say watch, but I listen to 2 or 3 hours of videos from various schools within the NIH.
Hmm.
And this is important. Why? Because health is my thing. That's what I do. I'm in the healthcare field. That's what I enjoy. That's what I like, and I do it because one, I actually do give it. I'm one of the very few people out here in healthcare who actually give a damn about what happens to brothers, because you don't hear a lot of black men coming out here in the healthcare field that actually talking about what's happening to brothers. Every time we talk about health, it's just usually in the greater context of what happens to black people, but we don't talk about the higher than average cost that black men pay in this country in terms of our health.
Hmm.
So, this is one of these areas where we need to get really disciplined as black men.
But
Is that is in our ability to just shut up, find something we like, and listen to it. You want to become a master. There's a very good book that was written. I can't remember who wrote. It might have been a medical doctor that wrote it, but I think it was called like the 10,000 hours. Why is it called the 10,000 hours? Because by definition, you're not considered an expert in the field until you have had at least 10,000 hours of experience within that field. And the
Hmm.
reason why physicians are considered the overall experts within the field of healthcare, not to say that nurses and all these other folks aren't, but why they're considered typically the top dogs is because the average physician, by the time they get out of residency, has spent far more than that in hours in training, not including medical school. So
and that
again,
starts
and
with
and to sit and to be able to do that, you have to like what you do, you have to enjoy it, you have to want it, and you have to be disciplined. This is why we get our asses kicked out here. That's why we go to these institutions and we get our asses kicked across the board by all these other groups of people,
Hmm.
because black men find no value in listening and learning about things that it will change our life. I just sat here and told you that there are plenty of studies, and you ain't got to take my word for it. Go do your research yourself. There are plenty of studies that show that once you start making 70 grand and above, not only does your quality of life change, but the way you see yourself changes.
and that all starts from attention span. If you do not have the attention span, as you just said, how can you accomplish anything? This society, it doesn't matter which ethnic group you consider yourself to be a part of. The
Hmm.
American society has been reduced to sound bites and small bits and 3 minutes of this and 10 seconds of that and 30 seconds of this and 5 minutes of that, everyone lacks attention span. But you know,
That's why you have so many two pump chumps out here.
exactly. And you know what, Mike? You asked about, or you made the point about manufacturing masculinity.
Hmm.
Personally, from my perspective, from my personal point of view, um, a lot of this stems from the majority of Black people in America.
Hmm.
Their position at the lower end of the socioeconomic strata.
Hmm.
So when you're at the lower end of the socioeconomic strata, what's most important to you are the base needs: food, shelter, procreation, recreation, entertainment. Those are your biggest things. So when you look around and you don't have a lot of these base needs, or you are struggling to get them, what do you have? What is the one thing that you do have? Masculinity, as you said, manufactured masculinity. Because as you go up, as you go up the socioeconomic strata, you do not see that. All right. You did not see Reggie Lewis, may he rest in peace,
Hmm.
running around with colorful braids and sagging jeans and talking like slavery ended yesterday. You
Hmm.
definitely did not see Dick Parsons or Kenneth Cheneau doing those things. All right. I can pretty much guarantee you're never going to see Robert F. Smith doing those things. All
Hmm.
right. So as you go further up the socioeconomic strata, you do not see these things. The manner of speech changes. You do not see this false bravado, because that's really what it is. It's a false bravado to compensate for the fact that you truthfully have very little in your life, and the very little that you do have, you're struggling to attain it. Now, the fact of the matter is, as you guys like saying, that is where the majority of Black people in America occupy. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's what it is. If we're being intellectually honest, that's true. So, um, for those of us, or someone like myself, who did not come up in that reality, you know, I can understand it, but I can't relate. It's not where I came from. So it has really given me and allowed me to really study this from many different angles, to see it, someone from the outside looking in, but to see how on the middle and the upper ends of the socioeconomic strata, people do not act like that. All right. And for the vast minority of Black people who occupy the middle and upper levels of the socioeconomic strata, you will not see that false bravado. Um, Unless, of course, we're talking your professional athletes, and the vast majority of your professional athletes who are Black, they tend to come from the lowest end of the socioeconomic strata.
Wayne Woman, good evening to you. Do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
Hey, Rennie.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. How y'all doing?
Chilling.
Good. Good.
Good,
That,
good, good to be back home.
that's good. And peace to everyone in the chat. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm here for the shiznits. I'm, I'm here for some pushback on this topic and a little bit of BFF. So I'm
Hmm.
going to apologize in advance.
All right.
Okay.
So I I surrender the thought here. I render the thought here. If real masculinity is even possible or available amongst Black American males.
You said, is it possible or available?
Yes, in the American Black male.
Yeah.
Where
Wait,
and
can
where do we find
can
it?
can
Where do we
you
find
repeat
it
that,
without
please?
having to build it?
Wait.
Can you
Wait.
can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I render the question if true masculinity is available in the Black American male, in the American Black male,
Yeah.
without us, those women having to put it together.
Well, I mean, well, the thing about it is, as and that this is kind of where I kind of say I kind of explained this in the past where there is what women view like what they view as in terms of masculine, like how they view it, and then there's masculinity in more of like the social context, right? Like which is more of a reflection or a sign of your competency and your ability to either create something or solve a problem, right? To engineer something. Men are tasked with doing this. It's the reason why men do the majority of engineering and large scale construction projects and stuff like. I think there's a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure that is.
I think that might be Rainy Woman.
Oh, okay. Um, why it is that men are tasked with doing these things. So if that's primarily what the task or what it is or what function that men serve and I would say now globalized society because that's what fourth industrialization is moving us towards. So if these are all reflective measures, then masculinity would largely be reflected in the most practical sense. It would be reflected by one's own how productive one is and their competency and their ability to either create or solve problems.
Mm.
That's primarily it. Now, then there's the side that women view, right, in terms of who is more favorable for mate selection and all of that. Okay, we're talking two different schisms. Now, because of some of the things that I engage in, it's not exclusive to black men, right? So some of the activities that I engage in, there's men across the board who engage in this type of stuff, motorsports, racing, and all that. And so a lot of these are guys who are filthy rich. These are guys who have mechanical and electrical engineering degrees, chemical engineering degrees. Very smart people, but do very dangerous things, like drive at 160, 170 miles an hour on a racetrack. So I mean, what is masculine is it's kind of up in the air now to say if it's available in the black community. Well, I would say yes. Whether it fits what women are looking for, okay. Well, that's kind of like that's going to be specific to the women of that group, right? So if what they seek aren't true masculine traits, well, that's not a reflection of my masculinity. That's not a reflection of my manhood. That really isn't. Like how if women have one thing that they prefer, right, versus just kind of who it is that I am, who I embody as a man. If it's not the same, it's not the same, right? Like it's kind of a toss up. I don't, you know. I mean, black women's what they choose is it can be a bit of a head scratcher, in terms of like what they seek out. But if it's a reflection on men like myself, no.
So here's another question. How does masculinity among the American black male rate in comparison to the Asian American male?
I think we all already know the answer to that question. All right. The problem comes from that hyper masculinity of the majority of black men in America. And that is a problem. And it is accepted, it is defended, it's accepted, it is defended, it is put on a pedestal. Like it is the biggest and most important thing. All right. So, I personally am of the opinion as you go higher up the socioeconomic strata, that hypermasculinity and the need for it goes away. All right. So I know someone in the chat made a comment about America doesn't like masculinity, especially black men. I have to disagree with that. Masculinity as a concept and as an ideal is celebrated in American culture and American society. Amongst black people in America, It is an over extreme emphasis on it. Like it is the most important thing. So if you look at other phenotypes and other ethnic groups within America, the heroes and the people who are celebrated, can be entertainers, but they can also be historians, laureates, scientists, businessmen. Amongst black people in America, who's celebrated? Entertainers and athletes. That's it. And who else? Your thugs, your gangsters. And that is reflected in the music. It's reflected in the culture. Look at the way it's reflected in the manner of dress and in the manner of speak. So, you know, I know a lot of people don't like that, and then there seems to be a lot of pushback against that. But from what I see, from my perspective of what I've seen, that represents the majority of black people in America. The number one most important thing is the hyper masculinity, the extreme masculinity.
Well, that Paul, that follows, what Mike kind of tagged as the name of this hangout, manufactured.
Mhm. Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, I was gonna say that it's manufactured in a way that it's socially it's a fashion statement, right? It's more of a costume, right? The $5 bandana, the $20 fitted hat, right? This sort of perspective that black men are taking upon for themselves, where they can wear their masculinity rather than to actually be the masculinity, right? No one ever looked at Steve Jobs wearing the turtleneck, blue Levi's, and New Balance for 30 plus years and said you're less of a man. But
Exactly.
had Steve Jobs been black, he would be a corny ass nigga, lame ass nigga, F boy, D boy, all of these things, despite all of his achievements.
Can
So,
I,
mhm.
Mike, forgive me for cutting you off.
Go
You
right ahead.
know, Black Cyber Network. You say one out of three of us have a felony and we have the choice to leave, but there are no black men that owns a transportation company to
That's
get us there, and no black man owns a transportation manufacturer. Number one, I don't know where you particularly come from. One out of three have a felony. Listen, even though I relocated out of the country, but I'm back home for a while for some reasons that I'll go into off air. Even in New York City, the largest city in America, which by the sheer size has the most crime in America, even in, even in New York City, one out of three black men do not have a felony. So I don't know what you're talking about or where that's coming from. Okay, and that mentality right there, that's that's another part of one of the things that I talk about, bro.
Mhm.
Mindset is ultimate. The ultimate thing, the ultimate change, the ultimate deciding factor in your life is your mindset. You have it within you to create the reality that you want to see. It is your mindset. It is no culture, it is no system of anything, of supremacy or anything else. If you have the mindset, you can create the reality that you choose to see. All
I
right.
mean, and that all the felony stuff and all that. I mean, this is a part of what we're talking about here, because no one, and I'm not, unless it's something that's celebrated in culture as some sort of badge of honor, or there's something that is actually gained from taking a low position. You know what I mean? And then that's where you engage in more hyper masculinity, because what you're then stripping away is like any sort of life objectives, goals being set, skills to acquire, and all that. All that stuff takes discipline. I think that's what Dr. Phoenix was speaking to earlier. Okay, so if it requires and takes discipline to pursue anything along those lines, then guess what you're not doing? You're not spending out time out in the streets with idle hands, thinking of some shit to get into.
Yeah, and I think what I was saying before is that this is more of a costume. This is what black men put on
Right.
as a form of bravado, like Paul Bryant was saying. It would be one thing if brothers were selling drugs, dealing narcotics, as a way to build pediatric centers in predominantly black neighborhoods, so that black kids would have a place to go instead of going to these these biased institutions that may not serve their best interests. But for a lot of these guys, it's very self-centered. It's selfish. It doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really get them to the top of Maslow's hierarchy, right? It's always in that level one, level two area of Maslow's hierarchy in terms of survival and whatnot. What I just find interesting is that this sort of manufactured masculinity is constantly uh, being used as a benchmark to say that if you are not this, then we don't have to respect you. And yet the same manufactured masculinity is not producing anything. It's not innovative. There's no ingenuity, right? I mean, if you want to say it has ingenuity, right? Okay, the guy used a Pyrex pot, so therefore he must be a STEM. He has aspirations for STEM or something like that. I don't see the value in what they're talking about in terms of this benchmark.
And
Well,
it's
that's
self-perpetuating. It's self-perpetuating. So how do you even point that finger at any other ethnic group or any other system? It's supremacy. That's
well,
that's
Paul. You point
that's
your finger
victimhood.
at it. You
It's
point your
self. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
you point your finger at it when the modus operandi is not productivity. You can gauge how effective someone is by what they produce,
Exactly.
right? And the quality of what they produce and the value of what they produce, right? Like, to me, this shit's not rocket science, right? You know, and it's kind of like it's not like some grand mystery. This is why I was telling Rainy Woman. I said, okay, well, look, really, bottom line is this: there's two ways to look at it. Okay, the on the one hand, it's gonna produce things of value. Okay, so if a woman decides that what what a guy is able to actually produce and manifest is that should signal like an attractive quality, because if that woman has a mindset that aligns with that, then guess what? They're going to produce offspring that are going to be able to produce things at a higher clip, that'll have a higher IQ, higher skill, a higher acumen for acquiring skills. Okay, this is what happens. This is kind of like a biological thing. This is really, truthfully, the reason why if you take the other approach, right, then what it is that you leave intangibles off the table, and then what you do is you produce good breeding stock, sure, right? People that have like you produce good football players, basically, right? You don't produce anyone who could actually produce things of high value. I mean, maybe an NFL contract is of some value, but we're talking about things that could also give you things like intellectual property, right? People who have the ability to create things of value. You have to produce these types of people.
Bro, look at Jay-Z. Black men stand up and talk about, look at Jay-Z. He's this. He's a billionaire. He made money.
Those days are done.
Bro, that was never, nor will it ever be a role model for me. My role models were Reggie Lewis. Okay, that was a role model for me. Kenneth Cheneau and Dick Parsons, those should be heroes. Those should be role models. Robert F. Smith, those are businessmen. Those are businessmen who
We did a
stress
whole,
education and productivity.
Let me cut. Go ahead.
you know, Paul Bryan. You remember we did Black History Month, February. We covered 24 black men who have changed Western society for what we know it today.
Yes, we did, and not one of them. And listen.
I see no difference between Reggie Lewis and Jay-Z, and I can imagine that were Reggie Lewis still here, because I read enough about him and I read his autobiography enough to know that I think he would be damn proud of Jay-Z. Because Reggie Lewis was a kind of a fighter and he was kind of I don't know if rebel is the right way to describe it, but he was about the scrapping. He was about the fighting. He wasn't some sort of Ivy League type brother who did good type guy. He was about taking it from the white guys. And he wasn't even shy about saying it.
My personal opinion in regards to the Jay Z
We shall agree
phenomenon,
to disagree.
I
Well,
personally
I'm just
think
saying
Jay
that
Z.
that's what I read about him in
Can anybody hear
his
me?
autobiography.
Yeah,
I mean,
hold on, Black
Reggie
Guru.
Lewis he was no punk.
Hold on, Black Guru. Hold on. Dr. Phoenix wants to get in. He has limited
Yeah,
time. Go ahead.
yeah. No, what I was gonna say was that I personally think, as much of a success as Jay Z is, I personally think he's an anomaly, and there's probably not going to be another one like him again. Because if you look at all the brothers that came up in the game with him, there's only a handful of them that also have gotten to the same level as him, like P. Diddy and Dr. Dre. I mean, they're all around the same age. So I don't think you're going to see brothers that have came up like that were pretty much organic, if you will. I don't think that's going to happen again. Two, I kind of heard it earlier. One of the brothers talking about that, there was a sizable portion of brothers that have felonies. Um, I would kind of somewhat agree with that because I've been into schools. I've been invited into schools to speak and and to talk with students about health professions and stuff like that. And I've been into a couple of these alternative schools, brother, and I'm telling you, most of these kids caught felonies at 15, 16 years old. They're done. I can't even help them. I can't get them into no health profession. You can't touch anybody. You got a felony. It doesn't even matter what it's in, especially if it's drug related. I really can't help you. But and I've had people getting mad at me because I've literally told them, well, I all I can do is talk to them. I can't really do anything in terms of helping getting them into these health professions because they have felonies. And this goes back to what I said earlier about the higher cost you pay earlier in your life as a black man when you're not about when you
So
comfortable in violence.
basically, you have an invalid system that's essentially designed to undermine young black men from the beginning because
I
the whole notion that someone can be ruined for life from something that he or she might have done at age 15, no matter how talented he might actually be as a potential physician or some other healthcare profession, that's more of a loss to us even than it is to that individual person.
Yeah, I would, I
It
would,
is
I
to a
would agree. I would agree is one part that, but also agree is the other part to that is that yes, there is a systemic component and issue with that, no doubt about it. I can personally tell you that been in the health professions, that has always been there. However, the things that we don't do to mitigate it is where we fail at.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there, I
And
mean,
it is so
as
much
long
easier.
let's just put this on the table. If we go talk about this, so obviously white supremacy is always going to be the 500-pound gorilla in the room. And you know what the problem is? White supremacy will always be here, even if black people had their shit together. And why? It's part of my language. Why? Because as long as there are white people on this planet, we will always be in conflict with them. Period.
Well, as long as white
I
men are
disagree.
intimidated by the physicality of black men, I agree that will always be an issue because there will always be this biological genetic inferiority undercurrent of genetic inferiority that they'll never calmly let go of. So I agree that we will always be in a contest with them.
But and to add to that, I like I said, I really like the brother MOT. I think he's probably one of the best brothers they got over in the manosphere. I don't see him on a lot of panels because he's generally tend to be the only rational one on most of those panels I've seen him on. But again, he talked about he his in his own business. This brother has hired many brothers that had felonies, double felonies, and he talks about some of the craziness he's had to deal with. I hate to say this, and I know this is gonna sound cool given what I do, but yeah, a lot of these cats are kind of done. A lot of them just got too many psychosocial issues that it would take a lifetime to address.
You,
I'm sorry to say
what
that,
about the other 800-pound gorilla in the room? And that is black people's self inflicted, self perpetuating mindsets. No one wants to talk about that. And I get so much pushback when I say that because that goes against every black narrative. It goes against every black agenda because everyone refuses to look in the mirror. Everybody wants to point the
yeah,
finger everywhere else, and it's systemic, and it's this and
Do,
everything else.
do
And
you
I'll never
believe
deny any of those things, but no one
do,
wants to
do you
put
believe
stick
black
their finger right
people
in the mirror.
Do you believe black people in America are sort of inherently any more self-destructive than white people, or non or other non-black people?
I think our priorities are wrong, and here's the problem. And here's why I say that. Because, for example, going to exactly
You
what
didn't
Paul,
really you didn't really answer my question.
Well, did you ask
I'm going to
Dr.
explain.
Stoops or
I'm going to
did
get
you
to
ask
that.
me? I'm sorry.
It's not
No,
that. It's
it's kind of a yes or no question.
What was the question?
Are
I'd
black
like to take a
people
stab at that.
any more inherently self-destructive in this country than white people? And I'm asking you this. We're all black men here. We've
okay.
all
If you
lived
want
this.
you want to if you want to
We've
ask a
all
loaded
we've
if you want to ask a
we
loaded question, I would give you that. I would
we've
give you a
all
direct
lived
answer.
we've all lived as boys,
Uh-huh.
and we've all done boyish things. And guess what? Those white guys did those same boyish things. Those Asian guys did those same boyish things. And it was really not so much that we did, or our peers, or maybe our less fortunate peers, did anything any more dangerous or reckless or harmful than anybody else. It was how society responded to things that we did as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old.
Bang, zoom. There it is, right there.
I
Are
will
we
agree with
inherently
that.
more
I
destructive?
would agree with
The
that.
answer the answer is no. We are not. It's
No,
it's the
no, that would
it,
be true. That
it's
would.
the institutions that are more in control that punish you at a different rate than they punish others. We know this for a fact.
I have this saying that a mediocre white man becomes a middle manager. A
Well,
mediocre black man becomes
hold a second, Black Guru.
black man becomes a convict.
Hold a second, Black Guru. It's not a thought. It's a fact. What you just said. Corporate America rewards mediocrity amongst most of the gray boys.
Well,
Thank
They
we are.
are promoted at mediocre levels. Brothers have to perform at a more superior level. I was in the corporate game. I saw how it was played. I saw how I was played as a top sales exec, and some shit's happened to me as opposed to extremely mediocre, inferior white boys. They were even
I saw it
inferiorly.
as an auditor. I
Built.
saw it as a business consultant. Same
You know,
thing.
they were even inferiorly built, small, genetically weak, small bones, small body. They looked fucked up, but they were coming off when they walked fucked up. Like, look at this inferior motherfucker. But at the
I
end of
would
the
agree
day,
with Nicole.
they came off. They came off fucking up all the way, but they got more shots because of the system. That's why we have to really grab more control of control our institutions. When we start to do that, then we'll start to change the game more in our favor for that. Okay,
See, that's
but
kind of
that's kind of where we are. You ain't gonna go up
I
into the white man's house, and you ain't gonna go up into his house and rule the roost. Not for too long. They will put an inferior son bitch on top of you, or
I agree with that.
or some sucker laid white bro. They
Yeah,
they
I would agree
they
with
they,
that.
they will do
Okay,
that.
sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead, go ahead,
that's
I
part
could
of the
tell you
game.
this personally, being in the military. I personally, that's part of the reason why I got out of the military. The other part is because I got a hell of a lot better job offer. But one of the major issues I ran into, yeah, there's a bunch of damn mediocre dudes I was with that I served with in the military. You couldn't pay him to be a good medic if you spotted him 20 points. I mean, again, I've seen it. I was the fastest guy in my unit, but people repeatedly got good conduct medals. I didn't get it. People got promoted faster than I did. But hey, didn't matter that I got good reviews. I can run a 2 mile in under 12 minutes. Didn't matter that. Didn't matter. I can completely max out my PT test in the military. None of that mattered. But again, I would agree exactly with Nagon. But the other part of it is that the other part of it goes back to what I said before about our priorities. Again, as I said before, to produce anybody, I don't care which route you go in the health profession. If you want to be a PA, a physician assistant, it's going to take you at least 6 to 8 years beyond high school to get there. If you want to be a physician, it takes about 13 years to become a physician. You want to be a nurse, about another 8 years. These are not short things that you do in a short period of time and you're gonna see quick results. No, this takes time. It's developed over time. And what I said in the beginning was that you have to be disciplined enough to be able to want to study, to want to enjoy these types of courses you need to take, and to be able to sit down there for all. You got to be up all damn night studying. That's the true fact of the matter. Doesn't matter if you want to be a physician, a nurse, an engineer. You got to be up studying all damn night. And I'm sorry to tell you, for most black folks, specifically black men, that's just not sexy.
Well,
It's a
okay.
hell of a
Hey,
lot more
you have
sexy.
another. Excuse me. You have another healthcare professional on the panel. Super Triz, welcome, brother. Peace.
Oh,
Super
thank
true.
you.
What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, I just want to say something. I was helping one of my friends study for his PA interview. I was helping him through school as well with his chemistry and microbiology and some of the stuff that he was taking. We kind of studied together. Came out of ASU, straight A average. He had a straight A average. Came out, applied to AP Still. He was 47 years old, and he was rejected. Brother, straight A average, rejected. Got all the requirements, did everything. Was rejected. I've never seen a man with a straight A average get rejected. I've never seen it.
I mean, I want to.
I don't know how to explain that. But
Well,
I
want to ask this question.
It's crazy.
You know, like because of the time that we're in, you know, because of the time that we're in, I think that this decentralized technological environment kind of it levels the playing field in a lot of ways, and this has begun to be the case since the advent of e-commerce, right? And I can attest to this because, you know, I was a part of that wave, that 1.0 wave of people who jumped on the internet to start selling stuff, and through successes, you know, challenges, all of it, you know, I saw that really there really isn't much of a barrier if we're taking a global approach to wealth acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you see, so I kind of there's
How long have you been doing that?
That was since the late 90s.
Since the late 90s.
Yeah.
So for about 20 years, right? So
no,
so
are you
why,
mean selling on? You mean like selling on the net?
Yeah.
Over 20 years.
Oh, okay. So why aren't you like as wealthy as the Amazon guy?
Because my company wasn't public. It was a real niche thing that I was doing. I was selling vinyl records. But for what I was doing, I made a lot of money.
So do you think you could have become as wealthy as what's his name? Besco?
Jeff Bezos.
Selling vinyl records? No.
No, I'm not talking about selling vinyl records. I'm just saying, do you think, all things being equal, if you had the same kind of ideas about how to do things, you think you would have become as wealthy?
That's kind of it's a bit of a pedestrian question, because you have to look into the evolution of Amazon and how it's gotten to where it's gotten to.
All right. Well, let me make this statement to give some perspective to why I asked this question. Do you know that collectively, all African Americans in the country have less than 3% of the nation's wealth?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, by comparison, the royal family of Saudi Arabia alone has close to 9% of American wealth? So basically, the royal family in Saudi Arabia could buy all our black asses 2 or 3 times over.
They haven't done it.
Do you think
apples to oranges?
I'm trying to understand, Black Guru. Black Guru, I'm trying to
do you believe?
Go ahead, Mike.
To my point, do you believe that's just a coincidence of black people not just doing the right things, or do you believe that it is a consequence of very strategic and very active processes and procedures in place that result in the status quo?
Both.
Okay. Wait.
Both.
First of all, you're asking me about how a royal family in another country acquired its wealth versus how it is that we choose to direct our flow of capital. Now, I spoke to this on a previous hangout, maybe like about a week or so ago, with regards to reparations. Now, it's been said that Black folks have somewhere in the tune of $1 trillion some odd dollars in spending power. Let's pare that down though. Let's use a very realistic number. Let's say like, would you agree that like annually for a fiscal year that Black America probably has $30 billion in spending power? 30 billion. Like
Oh,
let's get away from that trillion stuff. Let's use a number that sounds more reasonable. It could be more than 30 billion.
Easily that.
Okay,
Easily.
easily that. Do you think that we could benefit from redirecting? Let's just say 30 billion. If you just redirected the flow of $30 billion, right, into black-owned institutions that accumulate wealth and also enable lending. Do you think that Black folks could benefit from redirecting like the flow of capital that they readily have to spend right now? It's
I would say
not
yes.
that difficult of a question.
I would say yes and no.
Well, so how do you not benefit from redirecting the flow of capital into institutions that could effectively could save your communities? Because if you're lending,
I would agree that every effort should be made to do those things.
So let's stop right there. Okay, so we're going to stop right there because what you're acknowledging is that regardless of what the Saudi royal family positioning is, there's actually steps that Black folks could take right in their own country to largely kind of steer things in a different direction.
That's not I just want to make this clear. I don't understand the relevance of the Saudi family and being masculinity.
Go ahead, Mike.
The point of the statement was to provide a perspective in terms of just how far behind we are in true wealth.
Okay.
It was just to provide.
We have to understand that the Saudis worked out a deal with the West during World War II.
Right,
they needed somebody to help them out to protect their assets, and the United States government decided that they were going to take on that responsibility, which is how they got to where we are right now.
Now, historically, could you have seen any scenario in which Black people in this country would have been provided a similar sort of arrangement?
In lieu of that,
complex. I just want to say something very quickly here, and this is what I want to say. The way the wealth in this country historically has been through real estate and home ownership. That's where most white wealth is tied up into. What made you poor and why you was not able to compete. When you look at your schools and everything else like that, where your property taxes go in to pay for your education, everything else like that, it's tied directly to that. That's why the government in itself actually redlined you on the redline came from government, okay? And then all of a sudden they said, hey, listen, white guys, you people don't worry because we're going to government back up your house, your mortgages. We're going to redline out a certain area. So in case you have to go and you have to sell, we're going to guarantee that you can get a certain price for your home, so you can move into another area and so forth, and that this doesn't really hurt you. We're going to redline these Negroes out of your shit. And that's basically what the government basically did. You didn't get your 40 acres and a mule. You got redlined. You didn't have a chance to build wealth through those means.
And let's add to what you just said. To add to what you said,
okay, hold on a second. Before you guys jump and go mad, I'm just saying that is, you had a structural program to set you up to not to have wealth. This was a program designed to sequester you from that. Okay, and then when we saw it again in 2008, when they gave you all these predatory loans and so forth, people who bought homes and stuff at that point in time, then got torn out the frame one more again through the predatory game, and then they went and took their property and their money back from your ass, just like they did, man, back when the government started redlining your ass all the way back at the turn of the 20th century. So you didn't have a chance to your institutions of wealth building, which is land, home ownership, owning your land, Why did they burn down, Rosewood? Why did they tear? You're talking about, Tulsa out of the frame. Why did they do that? You own that property, you developed it, you started to make money off of it. They destroyed it because they did not
And
want you to have it.
Nagone, let me ask you a
That is
question.
how you build
Nagone,
wealth. That's
what
why
is
we
one
were
of
sent
the
behind.
what is one of the
Fundamentally.
chief sources of funding for startup businesses?
What do you say that is?
Home equity.
Okay.
To be able to borrow against
Okay.
your property to finance a startup of business. So guess what? If you're being redlined out of your property value, guess what you cannot do?
That's not
You cannot start businesses.
I did not take out an equity line of credit on my home in order to do it.
I don't want to sideline. It can't help it, but there are other ways.
There's other ways.
Your major way of building wealth in this country is through your land and through your home. That's how that has been done historically in this country. Okay, they redlined you for a purpose and then took your land back because they didn't government back your mortgages. So you sat there and essentially almost was paying rent on your property. And then the minute you had a chance to have a difficult period of time or whatever, they snatched that fucking property back from you. They freaking foreclosed on you and they took your shit back. So they took that shit back from you. You did not have a chance to build wealth in this country. That was by design.
Or they used that domain and ran a damn railroad through your neighborhood.
Okay, the name of the game for you to really build wealth here in this country, historically, is to own land, control it, build on it, develop it, and that's how you start to build your businesses, you build your community, and to build your healthier community in that fashion. Okay, why do you think your schools are fucked up? Your schools are fucked up because they're in areas that don't have a tax base, that are poor, land poor, okay, don't have enough money. You got 28 kids in the classroom, you got 8 books for everyone, and then they end up closing these schools down. You have people running around all over the place. You're not going to get a good education that way. And the federal dollars that come in to the state to fix the schools don't go into your school system. They go into the white school systems that already have it set up, and they take that money left, right, and center. Don't say anything about it. But tell, oh, the government shouldn't be helped. But this is what they do. You have been systematically sequestered from wealth. And one of the last big takes that we've seen from wealth building was in 2008 with the home destruction of where you had your home ownership, you bought homes, black people started to build wealth once again, and all of a sudden, boom, you had the crash, your houses got foreclosed on, your land was taken, black people lost 2/3 of their wealth, where whites lost just about 1/8 of their wealth there. You lost 2/3. You got torn out of the frame. You got destroyed. All right. This is the reason, and they wiped you out. Okay. This is the game that they've played. Let's look at the fundamentals and the basics of what these guys are doing. I understand it. I'm a homeowner. I understand how this goes. I own more than one house now. All right, I own a couple, and at the stage of the game, well, I'll turn them over and try to make some money out of it. But at the end of the day, this is the game that's being played.
There's more than one way. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
That's how you build wealth here in this country.
That's
one of the key things as to what they are trying to stop you from doing at this stage. Right.
That's not the only way.
That's where we are. Understand it. Understand the fundamentals of wealth building in this country. Understand that.
That's not the only way to build wealth.
Well, we didn't say that's the only way.
I know, but
nobody would ever say that.
The problem here
is one of the key fundamental ways that you do.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is, in response to that, what I'm saying is that that's not one of the only ways.
No. We didn't say that was one of the only ways. That's one of the key ways. That's one of the key ways.
I get it, but to push back on what Black Guru is saying, because when I'm speaking on what it was that I did, and I'm speaking from experience, so it's not as if I'm trying to prop myself up to be some exception to the goddamn rule or something. No, I'm saying there's multiple ways to skin a cat. A lot of people make their money in real estate. A lot of people make their money in finance. A lot of people make their money in manufacturing.
There's only one way to build a community, though. The community is built based on the land that's underneath your feet.
Right, but what I'm also saying is, there's also the acquisition of capital and resources from places that extend beyond where you are. See, because that does, that brings in an influx and a flow of capital from elsewhere.
Okay, more capital. People tend to invest where people tend to have a certain base.
What I'm saying is if you're conducting international business, if you're conducting international business, okay, that means that you have capital coming in from outside coming in. Then you can use that to go ahead and do what you need to do locally. Like that whole saying,
okay.
think globally, act locally.
Okay, how do you get that? How do you get that foreign capital that you're talking about?
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Well,
Okay.
I'm talking about like leveraging things like the internet, because
What's
you
the
can make
attraction?
money from. You can make what was that?
What's the attraction? What's going to bring them in to invest money specifically into your community?
No, I'm saying that you are the one who engages in global business. You seek capital resources from outside and bring it in. Right. What we typically do is we focus on localization. So jobs that are local to you, that are surrounded by you, industries that are around you. This is when you talk about how things have been traditionally done as far as wealth acquisition. You're right. It's very much terrestrial based. And what I'm saying is, though,
that's where most families develop. What you're talking about is entrepreneurship and a certain level of
because
people
that is the way of the future.
Who are going to advance, and that's fair enough. But most are not going to do that. Okay.
But look,
if we're going to get the
now,
majority of the community engaged in building wealth, you're going to have to literally grab a community and develop it.
And you know what?
And that's why you have some brothers who are going back to the basics on that. That's where we are in this.
Now, right? But see, now
that's how this country works.
But that explains why it is that the Brain Trust does what it does. We explained this earlier, how there's more offline stuff going on as opposed to online stuff going on. This platform only produces content for 2 to 3 hours out of a single day. And then after that, it's more or less about the project that we have going offline to actually do some of the things to engage in these activities that are going on, right? Because the fourth industrialization, all indicators point to this. See, so I get redlining, I get industrialized racism or institutionalized racism. I get all of that.
That is okay. I'll give you an example. Let's take a look at Levittown, New York. Okay, it was built right after the Second World War. All right, this was a suburban community that was designed for GIs returning back home to move them out of the projects. The projects were primarily built for white folks. Okay, they get them out of the projects to move them into a suburban type of living after the Second World War. We were fat, happy. We had a lot of good things going on. We came out the victors. All right, we all know. We all understand how that was. We came out of a huge depression. The economy was starting to really boom. So they took Levittown on Levitt, built this area. All right. Houses were going there, and they had all kind of houses, Leisure-Rama designs and all this kind of stuff that's really interesting as I studied some of these homes. And they had somebody's house called Leisure-Rama and these other kind of names that they had for these homes they were building. But those homes were going for $6,000-7,000 a pop. The GI Bill, another thing, we can call it a UBI, whatever you want to call it for those guys. All right. The GI Bill that black men and white men got, the GI Bill helped to pay for those houses. That was the down payment of those homes, okay, at that time. All right. Black men were actually sequestered by government edict that you could not buy in that same area with those white people. And you were cut out of that. Government did this. Your government, Uncle Sammy, cut your ass out of there.
Government is the people, though.
Said you couldn't get up in that spot, all right? Now, this is my point when I'm talking about building wealth. Okay, those houses were built 45, 46, 47 into the 50s. Those houses were built. Houses were going for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. That's pretty decent price houses. Those houses now are $450, $500, some close to $600,000 today. Okay, so that's the literal appreciation that these houses had, over 1,000% since they were purchased at that time. So that family that bought that then didn't have much. Now they're sitting on a piece of property that's worth over $500,000 that they bought literally for the price of a fucking pickup truck, a used pickup truck that you can buy today. I mean, so that's fundamental wealth building. You could leverage that, like you said, you could leverage that in the business. You could leverage that to do a lot of different things. Okay, but that's where they are, and that's why they have more wealth from that. Where black people who moved over, let's say over to Wyandanch, New York, where they moved them over to a whole little black section and everything else like that. That same house, that same Leisure-Rama house that was built in Levittown, in Wyandanch, is going for less than half of that. Half of that right now. Less than half. So you can't even compete based on a wealth to wealth level based on that and that alone. So that's so that's a big part of the game. And that brings in a lot of investment, a lot of other things that come into their community that isn't coming to yours. You gotta understand why when we talk about reparations, Reconstruction, why this shit is such a hot button issue, because it's all your government played a big role in sequestering you from
Right, and I don't want to.
Your government and others. This is some real shit. So we never had an equal hand in this game. We never did. That's not an excuse. We know that this is the case. So that's why we're fighting for certain things to kind of, even the playing field. And given the fact that we came out of the stalls 50 yards behind, it's unbelievable where we are today, still given the kind of opposition that we have had. And I believe we can turn this thing around if we continue to coalesce our dollars and hang together and help to build our communities collectively. This is something we have to do. We're gonna be forced to have to do this at some point in time. But this is where we are. This is something that we're gonna have to really sit down and think about. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to get Super Triz in because he's been patient and he had a turn. So Super Triz, are you available?
Yes. Thank you, Mike B. I'll keep it short because I'm on my way to work right now. But I do want to say that I do agree with both complex design and with Nagone. I think that it needs to be a two-pronged approach, and I use that analogy about walking and chewing gum simultaneously because there has to be a sequestering of resources from outside the community, because when we rely only on resources within the Black community, we severely limit ourselves. This is not what other groups are doing. Other groups are obtaining resources from other groups. They're not relying on their own community for resources. They get resources from other groups, particularly from the Black community.
Oh, Super Triz, I was just going to ask you that. I was going to ask you, like, how much money do Black people spend with white institutions versus white people spending money with Black institutions?
And we're not just talking about white institutions. We're talking about Blacks giving money to Koreans. We're talking about Black giving money to Indians, to Pakistanis. Blacks are consistently giving out their resources. We have what's called capital flight outside of the community. We have that capital leaving right out of our hands, going into other groups. So, but that's where Nagone's point comes into play, where we have to kind of bolster our own communities and fortify our own businesses within our own community, so that way we can provide commerce to our own community. So I think there is a two-pronged approach to that. But I think also that, and I want to wrap things up with this. We overcomplicate things. Yep. I think one of the main factors that we have to look at are three factors, right? And I think everybody has already mentioned these things. We have an attention span, an attention deficit problem. We have a problem with laziness, right? So those two things go hand in hand, and I think we have to have a cultural change, because like Nagone said, and I believe Black Euro said, there are factors that obviously work against us, but we have to develop a culture where we can prosper in lieu of these factors. Because when we look at immediately after the Jim Crow era, immediately after slavery, Blacks, relatively speaking, when you consider their previous humble beginnings, they prospered despite all the adversity they had against them. Mm-hmm. But I think that we've become too comfortable and far too complacent, and we haven't adjusted our culture to the current circumstances that we're in right now, because I think there's a lot of things that we can take advantage of right here at our fingertips, namely the internet, like Complex Design says. So I think that even though we have so many factors working against us, we have to, number one, find ways to work around this attention span thing, or essentially change the culture, so that way when children are brought up, because I don't think it's a nature, I think it's more of a nurture. So I think that if children are conditioned to have attention spans early on, because I see this with African kids, they're able to do it and they have the same genetics we do, but because their children are fostered from an early age to be disciplined and to not accept inferiority, this is the reason why they prosper. And they have some of the same circumstances, not all the same circumstances, but they have some of the same circumstances that we have here too. So I think that, number one, we have to foster that culture of attention span, and also just pure laziness. And I see this across the board, not just within the Black community. Like, I have a lot of coworkers, right? They're lazy. I work with them. I know they're lazy. And they're not. And listen, they're not black. They're not black. And here's my thing, right? If you're not actively engaging in personal development, whether it be through acquisition of resources through your occupation, or maybe some self education of some sort, or maybe like an institutionalized education of in excess. I'm talking about in excess of 50, 60 hours a week, then you're dead wrong. And I think that misconception, because we consider full-time work 40 hours, people think that they put 40 hours into the job. They've done whatever they've done all they need to do. And for some people, that's enough because they have circumstances that allow them to only work, or only be productive X amount of hours a day. But because given our positioning, we have a lot more work to do. We can't rely on a 40-hour work week or a 40-hour span of productivity within a 7-day stretch. If we expect to actually prosper, we're gonna have to put in a lot more work. We're gonna have to put in like 80-hour weeks, not just at work, but just 80 hours of productivity. That should be the norm. If you really want to change your position, if you want to change your circumstances, you're gonna have to put forth the sweat equity. Mm-hmm. And I think that boils down to just being lazy. Mm-hmm. And I'll pass the mic after that. Thank you, Mike V.
Hey, no problem, bro. No problem. Yeah, I want to get back on track to the manufacturing of masculinity. I don't know how we ended up.
I have some things I would like to say specifically.
Go right ahead, brother. Go right ahead.
Well, I do think that, I think it was Rain and Woman asked a question earlier about, I think she asked, can black men be masculine or something of that sort? I believe.
Like, can black men really be masculine in black culture?
Right. I think that was a very relevant question, and I think the answer to that question is complex, and I believe it is a crucial issue for us. Again, I'll go back to the external factors. The external factors do not necessarily want us appearing to be especially masculine, especially dominant, especially competitive. Now they'll accept competitiveness in certain areas, maybe in sports or entertainment or things of that nature, but there's no accident. The arrangement of our school systems, how certain school systems are funded and staffed a certain way, and other school systems are funded and staffed other ways. That's not an accident. It's not an accident that our schools are funded primarily by way of real estate taxes, which obviously then favor those who have the most resources, which are, of course, Caucasian. That's not an accident. That is definitely an arrangement created to minimize the competitiveness of certain people versus those of others. Now, sure, some of us black people manage to either move into communities where the public school systems are competitive, or maybe they do like myself, and I send my daughters to private school, so we could kind of somewhat on an individual level circumvent the status quo. But by and large, the system is not favorable towards strong masculine, competitive masculine output by black men. And if there's ever any significant number of us who clearly are supplanting a significant number of them in key areas of performance, in key areas of dominance and management and administration, that will be challenged. I don't think we can. I don't think we can ignore the history.
Of course, it's going to be challenged. I mean, anyone who's going to have some sort of advantage or leg up is going to try to ensure that they keep it. I mean, this kind of goes without saying. I mean, this is the reason why, even with all that, I really don't like to hear that type of shit, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, of course. I mean, you're going to do what you're going to do to try to maintain, any sort of dominant position as a group or a collective. I mean, in my view, though, it's kind of like, okay, you shrug your shoulders and you go about doing your business any goddamn way. Because
Well, of course.
truth be told, that's what anybody would do. I would almost imagine that, if you were the kind of like and played the dominant position in terms of a group of people within a given community, you're going to do things to ensure, right, that success is perpetual, not, for you and your people. Or are you totally free with letting someone else come in and taking over?
Well, so then going back to the question on the issue of Black masculinity, which is a reflection of dominance and or lack thereof, uh, you can't, you then have to take in consideration the fact that any sort of overt and very sort of deliberate and clear demonstration of black masculinity will be definitely challenged.
Who gives a shit? Of course it's going to be
We
challenged.
have to be.
It's
And
challenging when you watch basketball teams play. It's challenging when you watch.
We have to be prepared to accept that is what's going to happen, and be prepared to defend ourselves. Historically, Black men have throughout history been very masculine and done many wondrously masculine things, and our masculinity has manifested itself in myriad wondrous and uniquely wondrous ways.
But in this particular point in time, we literally had Reigning Woman ask us, well, what role does masculinity actually have in Black society? I mean, how far we have fallen. Right, when that question can actually be entertained with a serious thought. And this is no disrespect or no diss to Reigning Woman, but I found the question highly laughable. I answered it in all seriousness, but I said, oh, really?
Well, I think that question
we've gotten so far away from what masculinity actually is. Like I had to kind of stop myself from explaining like how I'm masculine. Just by mere fact that I exist as a heterosexual Black male and I do what I do in life, right? That is in and of itself. I mean, it doesn't really. Well, hold on, dude. It doesn't really garner any sort of explanation. So I'm literally just illustrating how far we've fallen away from what you just mentioned, right? Right, when we just kind of did masculine shit naturally. Now all of a sudden, every Black rapper that comes out, is waving a rainbow flag.
Well, and not just that, but they're also exacerbating this sort of stereotype that Black men are dangerous, right? But these guys are not dangerous. I don't know what these guys are up to. You look at the first 48, head on the table, in the interrogation room, crying for their mother. I don't know, man. It's like I see a form of masculinity that is being manufactured by not just outside forces, but by people from within that are saying, yeah, you don't want to mess with that guy. He got all the tattoos. He carries this kind of, a Draco, and, he could do this, he can do that, but he can't invent anything to save his life or save the community. Where are the pediatric centers? Where are the OBGNY centers that these guys supposedly are supposed to be so alpha male about? Where's all the institutions that they're supposed to be building? I'm not seeing any of this. Yeah. And yet these guys are considered to be the most masculine in the community, but they can't do anything to save their
produce.
There's no innovation.
They're considered to be the most masculine by whom?
The community itself. I'm saying the collective, right? The collective says, my money is on this guy. If anything hits the fan. There was a movie, I think, I forget the name right now, but it was supposedly in Yonkers, New York, or something like that, a couple of years ago, about white supremacists, coming in and taking over the neighborhood. I think it came out in the movies. I can't remember the name right now. People in the chat, man, if you know the movie I'm talking about, post it in the chat. But basically, they relied on these guys off the block. They grabbed all their guns and they defended the neighborhood. I've been in the Black community my whole life. I've never seen dudes jump out the window to save a community or even save their own family members. I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing this in real life. This is all manufactured. This is people. Somebody is pushing this, pushing this image of this black male who's incompetent, incapable of producing anything of innovation, and yet the brothers who can produce, are being told that they're weak, they're beta. You're not select, all these things, right?
The system's against you.
Right. Well, these guys, I'm saying the ones who can actually produce, the Marquise Brownlees and things like that, the guys I went to school with,
Yeah.
brothers be, in this hangout, they're not promoted as masculine. For whatever reason, they're not promoted. And you have these manufactured Negroes running around, on Instagram and all these other places, just not doing anything that's actually of value, and yet they're considered to be masculine. And I'm saying, what's the benchmark for this, right? What are we benchmarking?
Beard size.
Yeah, they're basically more on the physical side of the game. These guys are not really talking about what real leadership is and what real manhood really is all about. They're not talking about that. They're talking about who looks the prettiest, who's got the biggest body, or who looks who's the pretty boy, and that's kind of that's what social media is built on. It's a narcissistic type of deal. If you really want to get into what's really going on and who's really, what's really happening with certain black people and who are some of the movers and shakers, maybe you might want to take a better look in Black Enterprise magazine or something else like that, where you might get an idea as to the Black Excellence Channel or something like that, where you might get somewhat of a better idea of what's going on. Even those mediums are a bit skewed, but still, it's a little bit more accurate than what we're seeing being pushed on social media, and even here on YouTube, select males and who's selected, who isn't selected, all this.
That's all.
Well,
All this craziness.
But not so much about select versus non-select.
No, well, I'm just saying, I'm just following that point.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put some emphasis behind it, because I don't want certain people getting offended by this. But,
right.
There's this sort of costume, and I'm just reiterating this stuff because there's new people in the chat who have not heard the beginning of the hangout. There's a costume effect that goes into this masculinity, right? The tattoos, the thick beard, like Complex was talking about. The big fitted hat. All of these attributes that are external, but there's nothing internal. And it's always encompassing about threatening another black man. What I'll do to you, I'll meet you at this place. I got the Draco, I got this, I got that. Ask this brother about blockchain. Ask this brother about any fourth industrialized emerging technologies. Can't have a conversation with them. So if the community is going to depend on this sort of masculine black male, the community's already dead.
Done.
Yeah, it's already done.
Yeah, but who's putting out that image? Who's saying this?
This is what we're pondering, right? We're pondering.
Who's saying this? I mean, I see some of the folks who are saying this, and I personally, don't want to have anything to do with these people, to be quite frank with you. But let's be, let's be frank. Yeah, let's be frank? Where's my boy at? But anyway, let's be very, very frank about this. Who's really out here saying this? Saying who's selecting and not selecting. I mean, it might be a rather questionable crew of people. So I mean, I don't know if this is being totally defined by the overall community, or just being defined by some who are saying that they're the overall community.
Well, Shahrazad Ali said this a few years ago, that women maintain culture in every society.
Correct.
So, who are the custodians here? Behind
well,
this,
yeah, I mean, you definitely have a lot of women who are a big part of sort of perpetuating a lot of the mythology that you appear to be referring to with respect to the imagery, the somewhat outlandish imagery and persona of the modern African-American male, and how you surmount that There is no clear-cut way to deal with that, certainly without terminating the myriad forms of social media now. I
No,
mean, social media plays so strongly to the sort of the nature of females in particular that they're going to just continue to do it and feed on it and feed on each other's stuff.
Hmm.
And I don't see it getting any better because I just see the media just becoming more of this sort of uh, I don't know, gargantuan or shit Godzilla type of monster that's going to ultimately possibly destroy all of us.
well, I don't. I look at. Wait, I don't know. There's an echo.
Coming from Black people.
I don't think that it's. I think really what you have is you just have systems in place that have allowed for either the evolution of humans or the de-evolution of humans to happen at a more rapid rate. Okay, and so like this social media is just that. It's a medium, right? Which will serve as your fast track to either evolution or de-evolution. So you see, so I mean, it's incumbent upon men. Like I don't really care about like the whole what it is that sisters like. I really don't. You know, I know that there are sisters that are compatible with me, so I only deal with them, and because of that, I don't really have no problems. It's like whoever you make your bed in life, right? We all have to grow up here and understand that the decisions that we make should be conscious ones. Okay, that's just kind of like what you have to do when you live your life as an adult. We really do. You have to take responsibility for, what it is that you're drawn to. So in terms of things that may arouse you or you may be attracted to, that can change if you change, right? Like if you were in a certain area or a certain place of your life at one point in time, and Dr. Phoenix was speaking to this, you change just making money, making money over a certain clip or a certain level. That means you then start to live a different type of lifestyle. You start to then come around different types of people, and then your viewpoints start to change, and then
Social networks.
right, and then what becomes compatible with you at that higher state or that higher stage changes also. You see, so if there's not going to be any recognition of our own personal evolutionary paths and what is compatible with us based on that, then you know what? I will relegate I will relegate a large pool of women
Hmm.
to let them choose from a stagnant pool of hypermasculine men. Doesn't really serve me any purpose to feel one way about it, one way or another. I have my black child. I mean, it is what it is.
I want to get Sauchi into this discussion. He's just recently joined. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Definitely salute to the chat and the Brain Trust. Been listening for the past couple months. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, what's going on, brother?
Um, well, man, I got a lot on my mind. I guess to go to the very beginning. As human beings, we are tribal. We are mammals.
Hmm.
So where we are today with social media, and I do not blame social media because it's just humans interacting. Just like old world, old times media, all they're doing is just playing to the least common denominator, our base nature. So with that, those of us who have, I wouldn't say surpassed that, but those of us who have more control over those base impulses, there will be few of us. And this is before, technology. This is before industrial revolution. This is before all those things. Now the problem, if we're talking about black men, I would prefer to just stick with the black men here in this country. And also, my family is from Liberia. I am first generation, but personally to me, it doesn't even matter. I'm black. I'm black. It doesn't matter. We're Africans. We're Africans. But the issue is that, yes, I understand a lot of the women, the majority of the women, clearly, they are choosing quote unquote hypermasculine men. Personally, they're not hypermasculine. They're dysfunctional. That's the correct term. And yes, on the surface, they are winning. And that's fine. But those of us who are on this channel, the small percentage, whether it's 10%, 20%, doesn't matter. What we need to do is just continue to move forward and not even engage, but also not even put them down, because that's what a leader does. A leader moves forward regardless. So it's going to take time. It might have happened in our lifetime, might not even happen in one or two or three generations, but that's what's going to need to happen, because here in this country, as opposed to other countries, even where my family's from, Black men don't own this land. They don't have their own land. And I understand why a lot of Black women say, well, you guys have been conquered and yada, yada, yada. And yeah, so have the, Native Americans. But so what? We need to move forward. We need to stop paying so much attention to what they claim that they want, because they are being conditioned. Yes, they do perpetuate culture, but men impose the nature. And if men are, which is a fact, if men do impose the nature, then we are the leaders, period. So all this talk about these realistically dysfunctional men, Black men, I mean, I went to school with many of them. And I also went to private college. And, I hear all this stuff about, oh, these guys from the streets, they're the tough guys, and they do all this other stuff, thugs, and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And behind closed doors, I know a lot of their fears. Growing up, a lot of those guys consulted in me. I'm not a big guy, 5'9". But a lot of those same big, quote unquote, guys on the surface, who would see me in the gym after talking smack in school or wherever, and they saw what I can do with the weights, and they saw what I can do with a speed bag, and when they saw what I could do with a heavy bag, they shut their mouth. I didn't have to say anything. That's the real world. And more of us need to continue to move forward and forget about the women on the lower end, because on that subject, that's a socio-economic issue. So yes, I mean, they're at the lower end of that. So they're not even going to relate to you anyway. And it's going to be more of them on that level. So we just have to move forward, period. That's how I see it. I've been getting hit with this stuff since I was a kid. I mean, 6 years old. From even some male family members who are from Liberia. So the same stuff that goes on out here, believe it or not, in many parts of Africa, it happens there. We just don't hear about it. And I see it in my family on both sides. Same thing. But the difference within my family is that education is important regardless. I mean, having a college degree is like tying your sneakers, but it doesn't matter, because those that have come here, even those that are from there, if they took on that lower level or lower socioeconomic, traits, it doesn't matter. They do the same exact thing as what is done here. That's the real problem.
Have any of you all heard of the story or seen the movie maybe, or read the book, The Time Machine?
No.
The Orson Welles.
Oh yes.
When I think about Black people, and I've been listening to you all talk about, well, we need to do our thing and don't worry about the other Black people, let them do what they're doing. You know what I think of, Nagon?
Go ahead.
I think of the Eloy and the Morlocks.
And the Morlocks. One feeding on the other.
I think about, in the movie, in the Time Machine, at some point, the guy is in the time machine, he goes into the future, and basically mankind has divided into basically two groups of people. And that the Eloy are these beautiful, brilliant, I think they're blonde or whatever, folks who live on the surface of the earth, and they enjoy, freedom and untold, plentiful everything. And then the Morlocks live underground. They're this, under sort of retrograded human beings. But the interesting part about the story, as you see it over time, is you discover that the Morlocks eat the Eloi.
It's their food. It's
And
their
so
food.
as I think about Black people, and I think about how they're just sort of fracturing, or where you're clearly having people, maybe gentlemen like yourselves, who are very sort of productive, very sort of proactive in your endeavors, and so forth. I think of you as sort of the Eloi, and the sagging brother, and the sister, multiple time baby mama, the Morlocks. And I wonder if there will over time be any sort of peaceable coexistence between the two. I doubt there can be.
No, because
Did you say?
no matter in any. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask. Did you say Morlocks or Sister Locks?
It probably has.
Well, I'll put it to you like this: if this country is going to survive, we're gonna have to find that medium, or it's going to be a sad day for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to have to find the medium.
I hear you. I hear you guys in terms of doing your thing and being on your grind and that type of stuff. But I don't know how many gated communities and whatever shelters or whatever you guys will be able to build for yourselves or your sons and daughters for themselves in the future. I foresee there being a lot of class and economic strife in the years and generations to come.
You may not make it that far, brother. You may not make it that far. Dr. Claude Anderson had 2 different hangouts in the last couple of months and has predicted by 2053 that it's game over. We said this when we first started the hangouts, man, for the Black Brain Trust. 2045, 2050, give or take. If you don't make the transition and make the necessary adjustments by around that time frame, you won't have a Black community after that. It's a wrap.
And I'm also looking at wealth being concentrated in very few hands in this country right now, regardless. I mean, I go back to old Dick Gregory talking about the only 5 real white boys in America anyway. He used to say that. I used to find that pretty funny. Yeah. But he understood the wealth gap and how that's really going, and we got to take a look at that as well. So what I see for the future is if you're not really slated to move upwards, you're going to be moved outwards, and this is just kind of how this game is going to evolve, and that's going to be kind of enterprise wide across the board. So as I said, if we're going to survive this thing, we're all going to have to kind of get involved in this. I hear what Claude Anderson and them is saying. I understand what they're saying, but I'm looking at this very disturbing move to concentrate all the wealth, or damn near most of it, in a few hands. This is going on. This is going to create some revolutionary problems across the board. I just want to say that. Anyway, go ahead.
No, yeah, we've seen over the last 30 to 35 years how many civil wars that Africa have had on the continent. I mean, we still have civil wars going on right now. Yep. And people in America don't realize that stuff is going to come here at some point.
Correct. Yep. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my father, and we were at the hospital for another family member. And my father, we having an honest conversation. And one of the things he said, and it struck me, he said, "I see America turning into a third world country." Mind you, my dad's born in Liberia. I mean, he was one of the fortunate ones. Obviously, had college out here, all this other stuff. So he wasn't really there for all that. But when my father told me that, that's when I really started to wake up what was going on in this country, and seeing the trends of the downfall. Now, of course, blacks are going to feel it the most. I mean, just based off of numbers. I mean, it's just basic math. So that's the problem of why it will happen faster with black people, because we don't have the numbers, and then we are not united. United doesn't mean everyone is singing kumbaya and whatever else everybody's thinking, but I mean just having, a base level of standard that's high. We don't have a majority standard that is high, unfortunately.
You can look at the manosphere as an example.
It's a microcosm.
With all the potential, it's being wasted.
And now you know why there's a black brain trust.
Oh, I totally agree, and that's why I said earlier. I mean, it sounds crass, but that's what leaders do. You move forward regardless. And like I said earlier, I'm not saying screw the majority, but you have to move forward. Period.
It's a conscious decision.
Exactly, and you cannot force people to do anything. So if you can't force people to do anything, but you're going to sit here and try to change them, you're not going anywhere. They're definitely not going anywhere. So you're accelerating the downfall. That's why we must move forward. And those who will decide to have, the guts to move forward, they will come along. It will be a slow process. I mean, it's just, all you got to do is look at history of the history of time. I mean, it's unfortunate. We're just in a place where things are changing very fast. So yes, as a group, we don't have as much time. We just don't.
Way faster than what black people in America are prepared to adjust to. You've been around our chats, man, and in our hangouts, so you know the numbers. But the majority of jobs that black people work now, in terms of service level and retail, those jobs will be gone by 2022.
Oh, I mean, I'm in finance, man. So I see the numbers. I see how things move. I see how the real wealthy, not what they say on TV, the 1%, who supposedly make millions of dollars a year.
Gonna have to drop off, guys. Great conversation, man.
Okay, have a good one, bro.
Okay.
All right, go.
Okay, guys.
Take care, Nagone.
All right, you guys, man. Great conversation, man.
Yep.
The fact that most people don't even understand how the land really works. It's accounting, it's law, and it's military. We are not concentrated in any of those major areas. We're not. So how can we possibly sit here and, regardless of how we might believe we are superior as beings, if we aren't dominating in the three major areas, I mean,
of activity,
it just doesn't make sense.
I was just going to say, when you say dominating, now there's like nationalized industries, right? And then there's going to be then our participation in it.
Yes.
Right. So I just want to kind of make a distinction, because sometimes people get they're like, when there's this notion, this silly notion, or this idea that, oh, well, black men, you're dominated. And it's like, what do you mean we're dominated?
You're right. Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, look, no, actually, if I'm a producer, if I produce, that actually means I'm an effective individual. There's no being dominated. You know what I mean? Like, quote unquote, black men aren't going to dominate, say, like the military industrial complex. That's not even how it works.
Not going to happen.
It's not how it works. Yeah.
No.
Let me ask you guys a question. This whole dominant thing. Why do you men tolerate a female saying that you have been dominated?
We don't.
That woman should be excommunicated from black men.
Well, no. We don't.
And I would say what actually should be in a better time. They used to burn witches. I wouldn't go that far. When a woman publicly declares that her men are dominated, that's a treasonous act.
Well, I mean,
I agree. No tolerance of that, and to be able to openly and repeatedly make that type of statement without any sort of acknowledgement as to the gravity and the severity of that type of misbehavior, I'm continually appalled by that.
Well, here's the thing. Some of that type of stuff is itself. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I mean, the one woman, and I won't mention her name, just because
we don't have to.
We try to keep a level of professionalism on this platform here. I won't mention her name, but that's a recurring theme of hers, right? But she is, in all actuality, she is the figurehead symbol of what failure is, right? And so we have to recognize, and this is just by, again, what we are producing. I don't have to listen to you per se. All I have to do is see what you produce, and this tells me everything. You see, so this person who says these type of things, she's not even worthy of me mentioning her name, because of the simple fact that all I have to do is look at what she produces, and then I take from that and I go, why am I even gonna sit here and waste my time addressing this person when she is every goddamn negative stereotype and cliche a black woman could embody? It's not even up for discussion for me to even consider the opinions of a woman who basically functions in the same manner that she points at brothers like myself who actually produce real things.
Can I add something to that? Just want to interject because sorry, I finally got home, but to what Complex just said, this goes to the very heart of the argument of masculinity or manufactured masculinity. What does it say about the men that follow this one? Because she has a sizable male following.
Well, and then Dr. Phoenix, and then you wonder why. And again, this is really more of like a this is an observation. Why Reigning Woman could ask us a question like that, right? Like I was literally sitting there, and again, it's nothing towards her. It's just the nature of the question, the mere fact that it can be asked, says an awful lot.
Well, again, this goes back to what I said earlier about codependent relationships that brothers develop in these formative years, those years from birth to about 6 years of age. I mean, if we go back to
6-7 years.
we go back to the Erickson stages of development. We go back to Piaget's cognitive stages of development. These are the formative years.
Yes.
And again, so what does the average black male see during that period? Again, like I said before, you don't have a consistent masculine figure in your life. So again, these boys grow up with this codependent, often abusive feminine figure in their mother as both this masculine and feminine energy within their lives. And so again, it's not any stretch of imagination that these men, if you will gravitate towards a woman who who is very domineering and and denigrating in her speak about black men as a whole.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go right after you.
No, go ahead, bro.
I was just going to say that also there's a narrative that is put out there that the only way to demonstrate your masculinity is to go out on this battlefield to go up against a white supremacist institution or a white supremacist and die on the battlefield of racial warfare. Only then can you prove your masculinity, right? Only then is it valuable until you're dead, which gives way
you're worth more. What's that saying, Mike? You're worth more when you're dead
than you're alive.
But Mike,
and you're worth more, and which gives way to platforms like Black Lives Matter that allows those very same people that did not value that expected you to go out there and die, that they will make a profit and advance themselves in society off of your death.
They don't benefit, dude. Look, they don't benefit from us like getting blockchain projects off the ground and deployed. They don't benefit from us taking a position in the micro transport industry. How do they benefit from any of that?
But
Us being productive black men, right?
he
Who are creating value not only for ourselves but for our employees and all. Like, what is, how do they benefit from that narrative?
again, that's the majority. We're the minority, and this is not a reference to who's better or worse. It's just sheer numbers. So they're marketing to the majority. So clearly, on the surface, yes, they're benefiting from them. They're unfortunately not benefiting from those of us who are sacrificing, not chasing ass, not I mean, just doing childish stuff for the most part. And it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And whatever woman you're talking about earlier, I know you're talking about, she's doing the same
Oh,
thing.
I'm sure you know who I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
that's what I'm saying. I think I know exactly what you guys are talking
But
about.
but again, I think this goes back. I'm sorry, brother. I
No,
think this needs to be said because the brother Super Trist did hit on this earlier. I think this is a situation of nature versus nurture, and probably more the
yes,
nurturing part. And so again, if you go back to those formative years in a young boy's life, what is that part what is really being nurtured there? What are the seeds that are being planted in those formative years? That is where you're seeing the delineation.
yes,
Because
and
if you look comparatively at your non-black peers of that same age, I can tell you what I see being in
Yep.
the health profession. I can tell you what a lot of other folks I know, even Super Trist kind of hinted at that. That it's not just one part of dealing with white supremacy, a systemic issue, but also the other
it's
part is
within.
our response to it.
Correct. And I always have that conversation with a lot of black folks, and it's disheartening because they come they have a defeatist mentality, and you're trying to tell them that you're capable, and they're arguing with you about everything on the outside, but you're pointing at them and saying you're capable, and they don't get it,
Well, because
which is scary.
we've
What, what,
gotten
what,
to the like the all of the things that we invoke, right? And
yeah,
these things have largely, WS. I don't like using the term because
yeah.
I don't know. But this is the reason why, right? But see, when I ask the question, do you think these people are really superior to you? Anyone who thinks that white folks are like superior to you, like just in that sense, press one in the chat. Press one if you think they're superior to you. Let's see what we get. Now, what? I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No,
No,
I was just gonna say that it's kind of a loaded question to ask them.
Well, the reason why I'm asking the loaded question because you really have to think about it, right? You really have to think about it. Like I said, we pointed out, like, okay, could we benefit from a concerted redirection of capital flow? Of course.
definitely.
Can we? Is there a lot of things that we could benefit from by making changes just ourselves?
Of
Of
course.
course. Okay.
But
I mean that in addition to the systemic things, absolutely. But first and foremost, there is things that we could do literally that could like change. You could start to see changes just around you within 30 to 60 days.
that's right.
If it was actually a concerted effort, you could actually see this type of stuff. But
Dr. Claude Anderson has talked
Complex.
about this. Dr. Claude Anderson has talked about this. He's talked about it ad nauseum for years. Hell, he even talked. I remember I remember years ago watching videos of him talking about what happened to him in Detroit, and we see the current state of Detroit, of Black Detroit right now. I mean, there's virtually no Black Detroit right now.
yeah,
That's facts.
I mean, but we've seen what happened. He told this very elaborate story at how he essentially got ran out of Detroit, where he literally come in and had this whole plan drawn up how to build a Black business district within Detroit.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, Detroit was ran and governed by Black people
Black folks.
four
That's right.
decades.
Yep.
I
who's the
mean,
guy Kilpatrick, the guy who's in
Kwame
jail
Kil,
now?
yeah,
Yeah.
Kwame Kilpatrick. Before him, you had what, Bingham Young.
Yep.
So again, we saw what happened, but to make this really clear, going back to these formative years, and this needs to be said because I've seen this many a times. If a child does not know how to read by the age of 6, if they do not know how to count, do basic addition and subtraction. By that time, the chances of you catching up are slim to nil.
Yep.
And when I do see that, first thing I'm looking at is the mother. Because again, the mother will typically spend the most time with the child.
Yes.
That is a fact. And despite all of these things, as much as we say the school systems are bad, if your child cannot read, it is not the school system's fault. I'm sorry
It's
to tell
yours.
you,
It's the
it
parents.
is 100% your fault. If
Yep.
your child cannot count, it is 100% your fault. We know it isn't. We've known there's so many studies out here. We've known in the health sector for years now that by the time the vast majority of black boys hit the third grade, they start to fall behind.
Yeah.
And they never catch up.
Yeah.
We know it. So by the time they hit high school, many of them already been in special ed. And if you all don't know, if a child gets classified as special ed, they will keep that throughout their entire scholastic career. Period.
You guys,
They would never. They would not shake it. And everything and this is why you see so many black boys get to high school and they just get passed through, and most of them can't even read at a 6th or 7th grade level. So
Correct.
again, I live in a city. You know, the brother was talking about his dad told him it's a third world. But I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is third world here. You go on the black side of town, it's third world. I'm gonna keep it straight up and down with you. There are plenty of places in this country you can go to right now. Black folks live in a third world state. That is.
Mike.
No, I was just going to follow up on what Dr. Phoenix is saying. Most black neighborhoods that I travel to across this country, and I work in IT, and I traveled for work before, and I can tell you firsthand what Dr. Phoenix is saying is very true. These places are so economically deprived and starved. It's a third world country, literally within America, and I don't know what people are thinking that you can marginalize your most talented and upwardly mobile people, and men for that matter, and think that you can build a community out of not having those people around. There are too many examples on a global stage. Places like Somalia, when they ran out their educated class of people,
Yep.
your doctors and your scientists and your engineers. Once those guys left the community, that was it. The whole entire country imploded overnight. Same thing in Iraq. Dr. Phoenix has been there. Iraq had some of the most literate, highly literate people in the Middle East, and once their educated class of people left, that was it. The whole country fell apart.
I can personally speak to that. Actually, here's the thing: when I got out of the military, my very first biology course I took at a community college. My professor there was an Iraqi citizen. He had came to the U.S. many years ago, but he had a PhD in molecular biology. But he went to the University of Baghdad, which, if people don't know, in that region, University of Baghdad was considered the premier university for engineering and sciences and medicine in that region.
That's their version of MIT.
Yeah, and he went to school with a very particular, well-known botanist. She was, if brothers remember, going back to the Iraq War, you had the 52 deck of cards. These were your most wanted Iraqi diplomats, scientists, professionals, whatever. The person he went to school with was a female who was on that 52 deck of cards, who was one of the faces on that 52 deck of cards. He went to Emory. He went to Emory. He got his PhD from Emory because he worked at the CDC, and the CDC paid for him to get his PhD in molecular biology. And he told me, he said, yeah, typically it was about a 5-year program. He did it in 3.5. And again, and the reason I bring this story up is because look at this current state of Iraq. We were just talking about this like a couple weeks ago. Look at the current state of Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
I
was talking about my dad. I was talking to my dad about it this morning.
Yeah. Look at what happened. Pretty much all the folks you see here in this country that are from Iraq were your professionals. These were your professors, your scientists, your engineers, your physicians, your nurses, all of them.
Yep. Same thing in Iran. What keeps Iran together despite all the sanctions is their educated class of people. All their scientists, their nuclear scientists. That's what keeps the country together. Same thing in North Korea. They have a very educated class of people. That's what keeps the country stable for the most part, outside of the outside of the parliament, but the educated class of people are the ones launching the rockets and keeping the military industrial complex going. I don't know
Keeping
why
your
black people
grids
don't.
up.
That's
Yeah, I don't know
that's
why black people
Well,
think that they
I
can
mean,
get around all of
be-
that.
I don't
because
want to beat a
be-
dead,
be-
I don't want to beat
because
a
they
dead horse, but you
Mhm.
can't have a mature and thriving community based on what gets some 16, 17-year-old vaginas wet.
Mhm.
What,
That's
look,
that.
look,
Go ahead,
here's the
Doc.
problem with that, brother. Here's the problem with that.
Mhm.
Let's look at the probably the best case example of all of this, China. It was only in the 60s where you saw China come from under its opioid dependency that the British got them hooked on for decades.
Mhm.
yeah.
It was only in the 60s with the Maoist revolution and all of that stuff. So what happened? They invested in their people and they invested in their education. And not only
Yep.
that, you see it to this day. They send their best and brightest to the West to get educated. And these
That's
folks
right.
come back to their country and they built this country. And that's why China to this day has they've surpassed Japan as having the fastest trains in the world.
Yeah.
Not
Yep.
only that, they have some of the fastest internet broadband speeds
Well, they're about
in
to
the world.
put. They're about to
Well,
dominate
Dr.
5G.
Phoenix,
They're about to dominate 5G.
Dr. Phoenix, we could probably do that if we were willing to kill off maybe 10 or 15 or 20%
Oh,
of our
come
people.
on.
No,
You
no,
got
no,
No, we
no,
don't.
back
no,
on
No,
no,
we,
no,
we don't.
no,
We don't need to
Brother,
do. We don't.
here's
We
the
don't need to
problem
do
with
all
that.
that.
Here's
That's
no.
the problem with that.
Chicago.
Here's the
That's the
problem with that.
Chicago coming out of him.
No. I'm from Chicago. Oh, you from Chicago, Black Illustrator?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm also from Chicago. So
All
that's what
right.
I mean. We got a brother right
No,
here from
but
Dr. Phoenix from
here's
Chicago.
my point of making that statement, and it's an extreme statement.
I understand what
But
you're saying.
when you have that level of power with people and can exact that level of fear and potential
Yep.
retribution with
Yep.
regard to what they do and do not do,
You can
you can
accelerate progress.
compel them to do what is necessary to be able to compete in those areas because they know if they don't do those things, there will be no food stamps, there will be no Section 8, your ass will be dead.
here's the problem with that,
Correct.
brother.
Correct.
Here's the problem with that, brother. I'll tell you right there. I'll tell you right now. There is a point to what you're saying, but the problem with that is being in healthcare. Again, I'm gonna leverage my experience being in healthcare. It's already happening, brother. Pick your poison. High blood pressure, diabetes. When a couple weeks ago, I talked about a number of black male entertainers who all died under 45. Most of them died in their late 30s, very early 40s. So these were men that were technically in the prime of their life, haven't even really hit their stride because we
No.
already know that men, their most valuable years in their life is generally between 45 and 51 years of age.
Correct.
And so again, I put out at least 5 or 6 brothers. There's tons more that are dying, and each one of you all probably know a brother right now
Oh
that's
yeah,
in
yeah.
their
I've
30s,
known
or
a
have known
few.
a brother
Yeah.
that right now he's probably diabetic, probably hypertensive,
Yep.
and it's going to kill him at some point. Each and every one of these brothers I named, they've done it. I talked about it last week with black folks. And you go to these hospitals in these black neighborhoods. Pretty much every neighborhood you go to in any city, you pick your city. There's only 1 or 2 hospitals that service that entire black neighborhood. Where I'm at here in Wisconsin, there's only one hospital that services the entire black population here. If you have to go, if you have something serious that you need to get transported to another hospital, it's at least a 30-minute ambulance ride. And 9 times out of 10, if you had a massive heart attack, you'll be dead 10 minutes into the ride. So
They're not
you pick your
airlifting you.
poison. Folks are showing up in an ER, using ER as primary care offices, not because one, they don't have the money to pay for primary care. Two, they don't have the access, because I do a lot of my research in areas of health disparities as well. So again, we know in healthcare, the principal drivers of bad health and bad health outcomes in black folks is comes straight down to socioeconomics. Biology, genetics is only about 10% of it. It is socioeconomics
That's
and
right.
behavior.
That's right.
And you can go to any CDC, you go to CDC, you go to any Department of Health. The statistics are clear and cold. It's just that simple.
So
No,
so maybe what we would need to do, more brothers like ourselves,
Mhm.
would become more. We would need to be more public. because, as I stated before, we push the agenda. Yes, the lower levels of society are louder, but after time, people will have to catch on because they will have no choice, and it will be too late for most of them, unfortunately.
Well, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
We shouldn't focus on the adults. We have to focus on the
Right.
recently born and the unborn.
That's what I'm saying. The fact that we're taking the lead now,
Mm-hmm.
we would be an example. That's what I'm saying. A lot of the people don't want to sacrifice to do that. So brothers like us, we would have to be more public to be seen, for it to be the norm for the kids to say that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if you cannot get the boys away from their mothers, everything else is mute.
Brother,
No,
I see it all the time.
I understand
I
exactly what
see
you're
this all
saying,
the time.
but we are not, as a group, in a position to change policy.
Well, so
That would be
then
the
that's
fallacy.
why I am very pessimistic about the future, because if you can't see, it's almost like it's a war of we're losing a war of attrition. So that even if we were to have small wins and battles, the masses of those who are coming up are being ruined right out the gate.
Well, you cannot. Look, I think we cannot assume, or we cannot take responsibility for people when everyone has decisions that they make consciously. Okay,
Yeah, we can't do
you're
that.
talking about your own impetus for survival here, right? I shouldn't I shouldn't have to explain why your survival is important. Okay, I would think that that's something that kind of naturally occurs to you, right? You get up every day, or maybe you don't give a shit about life, and you could care less whether you woke up tomorrow or not. Okay, well then at that point, there's nothing really much that I could say to that. But I would imagine that if you are living to see tomorrow,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but you, Dr.
black,
Phoenix.
black rule. 1 second. Ulysses had a chart up. When you asked about the future of
Let me share it again. Hold on. Go
yeah,
ahead.
you
Go
asked
ahead,
about
Mike.
when you ask about the future of black society, we do. The Black Brain Trust does have an organizational chart that outlines that initiative.
I mean, this is like the and Black Rule. Just I mean, all respects to you, but like when I have these discussions, typically I have like the pushback is typically going to come from like older gentlemen. That's just kind of comes with the territory.
That's true.
Okay, but the bottom line is this: like for everything that you tell me, like it's like okay, well, that's what happened. However, the future is largely unwritten, right? See, so I can do more. I can do more with that than what happened. You tell me what happened. I well aware that I'm a Gen X. I'll be 42 this summer, right? So been around, seen it. I saw it. What's going on in LA. I was on the ground in terms of my social justice work back in the days when I was doing my music thing, all that type of stuff. But as I've gotten older, as I've learned more about how the world works, okay, then my strategies on how to be more effective changed. Okay, I'm what I'm not going to do is keep invoking whatever was taking place at a time in the past when I know that there's opportunity now for me for swift change to happen. See, so I'm kind of focused on what the pivot point is going to be. This flow chart that we created here largely outlines what our global agenda should be. It really kind of puts things in certain boxes and in certain categories, and it's kind of like you can kind of see where you fit in to the scheme of things if you're going to take on a more global approach. And so this is what when we talk about 3.0, we're literally talking about re-terraforming our minds and how we think and how as black men, how we're viewing the world.
Again, to what you just said, Complex, I think it is important to say that I, we cannot be focused on adults. It just simple. We can't. It has to be the children. Part of it is that a lot of black people don't want to hear the truth, but the truth needs to be said.
That's fine.
Most of us are broken. We're done. I mean, even I know a lot of folks in the chat don't like Umar Johnson, but even he says this a lot. He even says this about his school. He wanted for. He said, "I don't even deal with adults. I deal with kids. Why? Because most of you all are too set in your ways. You're not going to change."
Right.
Was that Frederick Douglass who said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men?
It is.
Yeah.
Because it completely is. This is one of the major problems I run into as a health professional. I can't change people. I can't get people. I can sit here and preach till I'm blue in the face. I can't get people to change their health habits. I can't.
Yep.
You know, even and I've seen people. I've seen people that got congestive heart failure, that are they're type 2 diabetics with stage 4 kidney failure. They need a kidney transplant. They're on dialysis. Brother's still doing it. I can't get people to change. It doesn't matter how much I educate you. It doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter how long I sit down. I'm empathetic. I'm sympathetic with you. It doesn't matter. People are going to do what people do. And again, going back to those formative years, we know that typically by the age of 12, 13 years old, your psychology is pretty much set.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And to piggyback on the brother, I understand exactly what he's saying. The one with I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, with the Thor hammer, but
Black
I understand.
Uru.
I'm sorry?
Black Uru.
Black Uru. I understand why you're saying, that obviously we need to take more control over the children, basically getting on over the mothers. That is part of the solution. But that's something that realistically cannot be done right now. Again, we just don't have the political power. We don't have the capital to even have the political power. Yes, we have a lot of spending, because all our money's going out as a group. But that's why, like Complex was saying, I agree with him as well.
What about a major effort? What about a major effort to try to compel male separation in schools?
Well, that requires a massive effort.
That's the same thing. Yeah, that's still political.
That's a massive effort, brother. And just to be fair here, I'm just gonna be honest with you, man. In healthcare, we do something called triaging. Who does your triaging? Your nurses. They do the triaging. Even when I was in the military, I was a medic. We did the triaging, and basically that's what needs to happen here. We need a triage. We can only the people that can be treated and that can recover. We deal with that. The ones that can't, you just put them in a category where it just is what it is. Like I said, it sounds kind of cruel given what I do, but again,
that's reality.
We don't have the resources, we don't have the manpower, we don't have we don't have the brain. I mean, we just don't have the brain power. Again, just getting the average black person up to the standard academic level you should be at for your age is an undertaking by itself, brother.
Yeah.
I really, one of the first things we learn in healthcare is how do you talk to people? You got to talk to people at a 4th or 5th grade level, because we understand that is where the average person's working knowledge is at.
Yep. And before I moved out to the DC area, because I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island, I did a careers day for a summer program for some kids, and it was a mixed crowd of young kids, young teenagers. And, I'm talking finance, and I'm obviously trying to bring it down to the basics. So for me to relate to them, obviously the brothers had Jordans on. So I said, all right, fine. How much do the Jordans cost? Of course, off the top of the head. I said, who bought them? The parents. Okay. How many hours did it take for your parents to buy those sneakers? What else could they have done instead of buying those Jordans? Even though I like Jordans, never owned a pair. I was very honest with them. What else could they have done? What is that doing for you right now? Silence. The only person who was asking me questions for my volunteer time was a non-black boy. Of course, what in the manosphere, what would be deemed, a beta. I think he might have been Spanish. Glasses. The kid knew exactly what he wanted to do. I mean, exactly. And I talked to him for a good 2 minutes. He was the only one in the class taking notes. That's where we are.
And again, I mean, again, going to this whole concept of manufactured masculinity.
Yes.
Again, these are these formative years where you see this idea. And to give you a prime example, every brother here, you done been to a barbershop. When the last time you gone to a barbershop, they weren't talking about sports? You got kids
Never.
up there all the time. When have you ever gone to a barbershop? They talked about anything science related, STEM related, geopolitically related. When the last time you seen it?
Never, and when it is, it's very rudimentary in terms of like, oh, that Donald Trump boy, ooh, that's pretty much all you got. Yeah.
In those instances, you would have to interject softly, because as a child, I watched my father do that, because that was the only way you would raise the standard. I would see him do that time and time again. Every time they would talk about these base level stuff, my dad would talk about a little bit, and he would raise the level, then he would raise the level, then he would raise the level. Then the next minute, everybody's listening to what he's saying, and he's taking them to his level, but not being condescending. So I do the same exact thing. When I go get a haircut, when I'm in these places, that's something you have to do that. So when you come back in, everybody respects you. Now the subjects change. At least when you come in,
Ulysses,
you've done your job.
Yeah.
Were you raised by your dad?
Yes.
Mike, were you raised by your dad?
Partially.
Partially. And I think Dr. Phoenix was raised by his dad.
No, I'm not. No,
You're not?
I came from a single mother household, and I talked about this briefly before. It was one of the major reasons I left college after my first year and joined the military. Is because I knew something was off. I was doing all right, but it was a culmination of things that were happening at the time, and I left, joined the military, left, never looked back. Again, and I've said this too before, that I would have never been able to do pretty much most of the things I've done thus far if I didn't join the military.
One thing I noticed about all of you gentlemen on the panel here is you all appear to speak with very calm and measured and organized thought patterns. It kind of speaks of a disciplined mind, sort of an organized, measured, and confident. Confidence in what you know, confidence in what you say. I contend that the vast majority, you are talking about earlier about the guys in the barbershop, and the only thing they talk about in there are sports. I contend that the biggest problem with black men, black males, black men, is that as a whole, we're definitely fearful of not measuring up, not being able to compete, particularly in areas that require a certain level of calmness and discipline, and being able to sit for hours at a time and read and study and perform experiments. And so often we live in environments that don't allow us to develop minds of calmness, where we can just kind of sit to ourselves and read or think or ponder or create or invent, because there's so much noise around us, or there's so much uncertainty, or there's so much posturing. And then, of course, as we get a little older, the women and the sex becomes a great source of noise within our spirits. So there's no way you're going to be able to master calculus or whatever you have to study to master computer science, engineering, medical science, because you don't have a calm and confident spirit. You can't. You're restless, and I hear it amongst. You hear it in the manosphere. We see it and we witness it out on the street amongst black men. There's just this restlessness, there and you get angry, and then at some point some guy gets a gun, or we got a peacock around the women.
It's artificially driven, though.
Yes.
That's what I was saying. It's artificially driven. Somebody's looked at me the wrong way. Somebody stepped on my shoes.
Yes.
Got the wrong
Even in
color
the
on.
even in the manosphere.
But if you were trained to have a disciplined and a calmness within you, then that moment when someone steps on your shoes or whatever, it's not that big a deal. But if you got this restlessness within you, this just kind of strife, this sort of undercurrent of strife within you, you can't really focus. When something happens that doesn't go your way, you immediately go to the nth degree and do things that are probably even very self-destructive, just like that, because you have not developed within you this sense of it's okay, it's not a big deal, this is light, this is calm. If you're lucky, you get this from your father because you kind of seen him have to handle things. Maybe you get it in the military where you have to kind of be very organized, and you see the actual product of your efforts and how you progress from this point to that point.
Let me speak. Let me speak to the in relation to this, to the context of this conversation. Let me speak to this
Complex by
military
design.
piece. I'm sorry.
No. It was a joke. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. And context to this conversation, just the military piece in general. Or, I'm sure the brothers on the panel know, but even in the chat. But as a whole, the military is essentially the last bastion of pure
Masculinity.
masculinity.
It's a
It
fact.
is the last bastion.
Yep.
And again, we're seeing over the years how that's been trying to, they've been trying to chip away at it, but the military is resistant. It's never gonna happen. And I'll tell you this much. There were a bunch of guys. I remember when I joined, there were guys that I was meeting basic training. I mean, these were some hood street cats. They thought they were the bee's knees. They thought you could beat every dude ass they came across. And you got folded up by some 5'9",
That's right.
170-pound drill sergeant.
That's right.
And you know what? And you got they got in your. You thought you was gonna talk crap. They got in your face. You got in your face. They hit you with the brim of the hat and asked and told you to do something. If you pulled it, they had something for you. And again, and how you learned how to deal with conflict, because I think this is a major part of manufactured masculine is conflict resolution. How you learned how to deal with conflict within the military. If obviously I went to all male basic training. It was I think it was one of the last cohorts that they had when I went in that were all male. And how you learned how to deal with conflict resolution was that, like, yeah, you had a problem with dudes, the drill sound like, okay, yeah, we got a sand pit out here. You go take your asses to the sand pit and you work it out.
Yep.
And basically you had dudes over there beating the crap out of each other. When you done beating the crap out of each other, drill sergeant just smoke you for a couple hours, and then you all shook hands, made up, and you were working together. Because why? The military understands something that black people have failed to understand, is that you have to purify your ranks. You cannot go. No general will ever go to war with an army that is dysfunctional and cannot be led.
So you're basically talking about culture and environment and in hierarchy, which obviously
And
amongst
that is the
and
problem.
that exactly that is the problem. And the default standard is extremely low. So even if you are raised by a strong father, loving family, blah 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 blah, if you are put into another environment, you're more susceptible to sink to that level. And we've all seen this. my childhood best friend, both parents, church, everything. The minute we got into middle school, man, I literally saw him starting to change. Started to hang out with the hood guys, yada yada yada. Fast forward to high school, senior year, just graduated. He's hanging out with some two clowns. They go to a store to rob it. Mind you, again, he doesn't need the money, but he's with them because he's down. One of the clowns kills the owner. He just the guy I grew up with just got out of jail last year, and he's been in there since 2001. Finish. But
He's done.
of course when he gets out, celebration, blah blah blah. This is a kid. I mean, we were like, best of friends. We did everything. We spoke every day. Two opposite directions because of the environment. Even though we were in the same environment, I just used my freaking head. But that's what happened. He went to their level, which was way below what he was even raised to be. And a lot of that happens, but I don't hear people talking about that.
But that's a
That
part of
aspect too.
yeah, and that's a part of the manufacturing of the masculinity, right?
That's
The
right. That's
incarceration, right, of the black
That's
male, right? He goes into jail and now he's a real man. He's a real nigga, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the real tough guy. And yeah, I mean now he's like 6'5", 6'6" now. But when we were growing up, I mean he was still the biggest guy, but who was the only guy who would calm him down, who could handle him? That was me. And that's the real world. Just as the doctor was saying, the 5'9", 170 guy. That's the real world. And that's why, like I said, we have to continue to just move forward. Yes, we can touch the kids, to give them hope and direction. That's the best we can do, because
It's all you can do, man. Like, look,
exactly.
you weren't born. Like, I don't recall signing a contract on the day, as I passed through the Stargate into this existence and into this realm, that said, "Hey, you're gonna be the saver of peoples."
Exactly.
Okay, that didn't happen. Now,
Yes.
what's actually more effective is for me to like get out here and do some amazing shit, right? Whatever it is that I'm into, do it and be the best at it, and try and make a mark.
Yes.
Right? Because see, there's people unbeknownst to them, they don't know this. I never had the opportunity to go up to them personally and tell them, like, dude, you inspired me to do this. You're the reason why I do this. I saw what you were doing and I said, you know what? I can do that. You don't know who it is that you might actually touch.
That's right.
Just by you pursuing and trying to be the greatest version of you. You don't know. You don't have to personally have our hands on every single child, right? That's not necessarily how it works. They can observe you just through your actions, just by what you do. They can just see you do something and say, damn, you know what? That's somebody that looks like me who's doing that. Interesting. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. And that's exactly what I'm saying. That's what we need to do. And it's not to say screw everybody else. It's to say this is what it is. This is what needs to be done. This is reality. If you're on board, cool. If you're not on board, cool. But we're not going to sit here and waste time if you're not on board. Doesn't mean we're better or whatever. We literally don't have the time. Now, if you would like to have a real discussion, not posturing, then I can, give you some resources. Then come back to me. Now, if I hear a change, then that tells me that you at least did some work. Okay, you're proven that you're willing to do some work. Okay, then we can move forward. It's just like anything. It's just like any other type of relationship. That's how it should be done. Same thing with dealing with the women. The majority, they're looking for permission, especially in the black community, from the women. We here don't, but we're not the majority. That's why we have to continue to move forward. Hey, the women want to act crazy. They want to do whatever they want to do. Cool. But we're not going to come out of pocket to save your ass. And we're also not going to go, waste our time telling you that. Our actions are just going to show.
Well, that and the thing is too is that, like, so with the whole woman piece, right? And we largely made it kind of like a mandate to not really discuss. I mean, this is an open chat, right? So we do that. But if anyone ever wondered why, because again, it's discipline. Okay, we have days where we talk about certain subjects and we don't deviate from the dockets. All right, so that's a display of being disciplined as a group. Open chats is a little bit different. Now, with regards to what you're saying there, it works the same way. You know, it works the same way in that if a woman sees that you're multifaceted, right? And this is kind of where like that whole sort of sapiosexual angle comes into play, right? There's a display of your multifaceted, of you being multifaceted. Okay, there's no discussion in it really, other than maybe like a curiosity on her part, and then maybe I'll relay some of what it is that I do and why I'm into it and all that type of stuff. These sorts of things create the draw, and these are the type of standards that as men you set inherently. You don't like. I don't have to force a woman to take some sort of interest in what it is that I do or whatever. She'll let it be known. Outside of that, it's like, look, dude, we're all, like I said, we're all humans. We get up every day. We have our decisions that we have to make. We have things that we have to do. So in that regard, I am not concerned about the mate selection of Black women, you know, writ large. I really am not. You know, and that's just with brothers like us and what we're talking about here. Look, that just has to be a natural mindset that's just adopted, and you go about life pursuing it so that you're having the best, and then by virtue of that, you draw the best to you in all aspects of life, women included.
Yeah, totally agree.
Again, you know, complex is exactly correct, and going to what Mike just said, you know, you guys have the docket, but I have an even better word for it. It's called an agenda. And again, Black folks should never be around each other. This is not my words. This is the wise man, the great Neely Fuller, who's always said this. Black folks should never congregate, be around each other, be in the same room with each other unless they have an agenda. And so again, you know, most Black men, when they get around each other, there's no agenda. So again, you go to the barbershop, using the barbershop, for example. That's why most of the conversations usually devolve into, you know, some sports, even though brothers can dissect sports with a scientific level of precision.
Yeah. A lot of Stephen A. Smiths running around.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it devolves into, some whatever's going on in the hood, or some other, stuff going on with women or whatever. It's always these base rudimentary level conversations. It's never about things that happen. And I give you a prime example where when with some of the research I did, I did some research with Department of Public Health, and one of the programs that we were looking at was doing a cancer education program, specifically prostate and colorectal cancer for Black men. And how were we going to do this? We were going to train people to do colorectal and prostate cancer education in barbershops. So we were going to train barbers, and then that way, when they have their customers come in, they'll talk to these brothers. They'll have brochures and stuff like that. They'll talk to these brothers about doing colorectal and prostate cancer screening and stuff like that. Because again, we know in the healthcare arena that prostate cancer is the number one cancer killer for Black men. The close second being colorectal cancer, excuse me. And not just the number one killer, but Black men have far higher mortality rates compared to white men. We're talking anywhere between 5 to 6 times higher mortality rates compared to Black men. So again, and where I'm at in Wisconsin, this is a major issue. And so one of the things we set out to do was to train barbers and stuff like that on doing prostate and colorectal cancer education. And again, why? Because we knew that this is the major place where the vast majority of Black men can congregate and they can actually talk, even though it is about these very rudimentary conversations. But try to force a serious conversation about health at these levels. And again, That goes to where are our priorities as black men, because we're quick to put a ball into a young boy's hand, but we say, oh, here's this pre-algebra book, or this pre-calculus book, excuse me. You know, here, you're 4 years old. I want you to learn Arabic and uh well Igbo. I want you to learn that. You know, you think about all these things that we could be doing in these formative years, but instead, for the average black boy, uh, they don't learn that, and we do put a football or a basketball in their hand, and then we wonder why these boys grow up and they're 18 years old, and they're getting picked up by these D1 schools, but yet their reading and math skills are at elementary level. They're not even at 12. You test the average college athlete. Most of them are not even doing math or reading at a 12th grade level.
My daughter reads better than some of them.
Yeah. And again, and what do? They get into these D1 schools, they get into the UABs and the LSUs and all these places like that. And what do? They pick up some communications degree, a worthless degree. Most of them never finish because either a couple things happen. We see the story play out all the time for these types of guys. Is that they get to these schools, they fell out, they party out, they be on that rah crap when they get there. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They got anger management issues. They have self-control, impulse control issues. And eventually these programs were like, well, talent's a dime a dozen. We can find another dude like you.
Yep.
So eventually they get tired of him and kick him out. So again, and this is and why? Because this is how majority of these young black boys grow up.
Dr. Phoenix.
Yes, sir.
You remind me of I'm considerably older than you. You remind me of the DePaul basketball team in the '80s, and they had a player on the team. His name was Skip Dillard, and he was a good player, not quite good enough to make it to the NBA, but he was really good. I think he may have made like a second team All-American or whatever. And like 2 or 3 years after he was done with his basketball eligibility, he got caught robbing a convenience store. Now, this guy was like one of the biggest sports heroes in Chicago in like 1989. And like by 1991 or 92, he was robbing convenience stores.
I can raise you one even better. I know a brother right now sitting in prison from the time I was in the military. Him and I were both medics, and a good friend of mine. This brother was from New York, and this brother, military guy, this brother was robbing people where we were stationed at.
Yeah.
And eventually he ended up robbing some civilians. They popped him off for about 10, 15 years for armed robbery. Robbing high schoolers. I mean, just real craziness. And he was a good friend of mine. Him and I were real cool. But I left. I went someplace else, and then a couple years later, I'm hearing this brother got caught up in all kinds of trouble. And again, he was a cool cat, but again, similar background to mine.
Yep.
Just didn't have that influence, and unfortunately, even the military can help him in that regard. And it's not foolproof going into the military again, because it's just not. But again, I've seen stories like that. I mean, when I was growing up in Chicago, I mean, one of the big high schools that used to pump out a bunch of D1 athletes was Simeon High School, which I lived in that. I grew up in that neighborhood, so yeah, this is just one of these things that where we our priorities as black men, and specifically those of us that are fathers, is just so skewed, and we don't understand the concept of how we need to turn young black boys into the industrialists of the 21st century. They need to be able to go out here and revolutionize and create industries where there are none.
You're talking about the health issues. One of the things I do is I have a couple of nephews, and I take them for their annual physical and dental exams every year. I started a couple of years ago. Dad's not around type of thing. I think if more of us did that kind of thing with boys starting out very early, just sort of kind of making it a priority of that your health, your life is important. And these are the things that you do to maintain and to enhance your life. I think if you start to do that with boys very early and because I've always said that the advantage that females have over males health wise is gynecology because such an emphasis is placed on their health at a very early and very sort of specific and focused kind of way on them that is not applied to the lives of males. And I think it makes them or helps to make them a little more accustomed to just dealing with physicians, earlier in life. But yeah, I think if we, started to like take young boys or try to help young boys become familiar and comfortable with the healthcare profession and their interaction with the healthcare profession, I think a lot of these very sad and unfortunate circumstances that occur later on in life may be less likely to occur.
Yeah, again, this goes back to some of the principal issues that plague us as black men. We understand that black men die 10 to 15 years younger than other groups of men and other groups of people, period. We understand that. This is very well known. In fact, it's such an issue that personally I think it should be considered public health emergency. That's my personal opinion on that. We've seen it earlier this year with John Singleton, 51-year-old.
Yeah.
Man,
yeah, that came out of nowhere.
Died of a massive heart attack. And I'm telling you, we're seeing this in folks my age, younger. We're seeing this in 30-year-olds. We're seeing this in 20-somethings. Hell, if I'm being honest, we're seeing colorectal cancer in 20-year-olds. Now, typically, these are things that are associated with aging, being older. But we're seeing it in 20 and 30-somethings. And so this is one of these areas where I talked about earlier. When we grow up as young boys and we're growing up and we become grown men, because we live in this environment where we don't define our masculinity through the things that we've done, through the accomplishments that we racked up in our lives. They're defined through these superficial things: how many women you can get, how many sex partners you've had, all these other silly, nonsensical things.
Manufactured.
Black male promiscuity.
Yeah. So what happens? As I said before, we pay a higher price physiologically and socially earlier in our life, which is the reason why black males tend to have a shorter lifespan. As to where black women, they tend to pay those higher prices later in life. So if a woman chooses the wrong man to have a child with, she typically does not experience that problem with her bad decision making until she's in her 30s, until she's in her 40s. For black men, you start to experience it when you're in your teens, when you're in your 20s.
Well, you experience it from the it's a generational thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because in order for like a male to experience it in your teenage years, it had to have been passed down to you. Versus if the mate selection choices, right, that are taken by women, like that's a conscious decision that can be made, like in the 20s, early 20s, and then that sets that up what you're talking about for later on in life when you get into your 30s and 40s. So this is very much a generational thing, and at some point the chain has to be broken, right? It can't just keep going in a circle. You have to break the chain at some point.
Yeah. Again.
Yeah. What I do, I have nieces, nephews, and godchildren, whatnot. One father, he's on top of everything. So I mean, I'll just feed him some information, but I mean, he's not, but he's white, so of course he's on top of everything. My nephews out here, their father, he's a knucklehead, and he's old. Of course, he's older than me. He's my older sister's ex-husband. So what I do, I feed the boys things, little nuggets here and there, and I don't push anything on them. I just tell them, just look outside. Look what happens to these type of people. Look what happens to these type of boys or men or girls, and then base that off of what you believe, base that off of what your peers are saying, and then base that off of exactly what I'm telling you. You make the decision. You're smart enough to figure it out, and they come back to me, and that's how they learn. I don't force anything on them. Health, finance, all that stuff. At first, I was trying to push it on my sisters, and I was like, why would I do that? They're not gonna listen to me. So I feed the boys some things. And because I'm doing it, they listen. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Uncle Sal is okay. Oh, Uncle Sal said something, but he does it and he gets results. And that's what I want. And then they'll come back to me for more questions. That's how you teach children, because especially boys, naturally they're going to rebel. I mean, it's testosterone. I mean, my nephews are teenagers now. So I totally agree with what the doctor's saying. Yes, the
Here's the
problem
other
is,
part.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, brother. Go ahead.
No, that's it. No, you're the doctor.
Now, I was going to say something because Black Guru said something that was very important. He's talking about taking his nieces and nephews for dental.
Yep.
I don't think earlier we talked about the bro. I think it was Salchi that talked about his dad talking about a third world that America was moving to, and then I said, brother, for Black people, they're already living in it, and Mike and Complex talked about it. Here's how far down the rabbit hole we are in terms of our health. Most Black children do not get dental care. The vast majority of Black children do not get dental care because the parents can't afford it. This is a fact. They've had they're you go to any public Department of Public Health in any city you in, they typically have some early childhood dental program where they providing basic dental services because many kids can't even brush their teeth, don't know how to brush their teeth.
Yep.
And they have tons of cavities, rotting teeth in their mouth, and they have to miss tons of days out of school because of that.
Yeah.
And I mean these are all things that are well, I mean, man.
A toothbrush.
And here's the funny part.
Really a toothbrush.
I mean, this is not even funny. Here's the more interesting part. When you have cavities, long-term cavities create, you can get they're homes for bacteria growth, and so you get a lot of kids who get infections because they have long-term cavities, and those infections could eventually go to the brain.
Yes. Yep.
And people
I've also heard they can affect the heart too.
Yes. It travels to the heart. You can get like pericarditis. You can get endocarditis, stuff like that. You can get infections of the heart muscle itself. And so, yes, it is. All these things are very possible. On top of the fact that pretty much, even where I'm here, they have programs to help kids going back to school where they're offering backpacks with basic school supplies. We're talking about notebooks, pens, pencils, whatever. Because again, if you choose these kinds of men, these men who have this, what we call them, I don't know, you call them the Pookies, Ray Rays, whatever you want to call them. I don't know. We've heard this consistently. I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in, and I've heard brothers sit there literally say, "Yeah, homeboy locked up. The real OGs locked up. The real dudes locked up." And I'm sitting here looking like, no, prison is a place for undisciplined, neurotic men. That is a fact. The brothers who have gone to prison, I'm not saying that brothers don't get railroaded because of white supremacy, but I've heard this from plenty of brothers in the manosphere that, they all self-made men and they have their own businesses, and they all talk about, I got a record, but I had to do this. They all said the same thing. I had to change this specific part of who I am, this part of my psyche to get to where I'm at. And that is a fact. And we know that when women choose men like this, they pay the price. They pay the price. It is a life and death choice when you choose these kinds of men. Period. Whether you showing up in the whether these men are showing up in the ER dead because they got shot by another brother out in the street, or whatever the case may be, or whether the women are showing up in the ER because you got infected by an STI by the same dude who's sleeping with 5 other women in the neighborhood.
It's it's an epidemic, and it's what has happened in my personal life. I mean, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so what happened in my personal life? I mean, yes, a lot of the black women, a lot of women, period. I mean, they do choose that way, but especially in with the blacks, yes, they do choose those types. I get it. It's exciting. Blah 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 blah. I have female family members that choose some of those guys, and I have the ones that choose guys like us. And of course, the ones that choose guys like us, they're doing. I mean, it's night and day. But again, we have to just move forward, man, because it's just not going to change. You know, on their end for the most part. We can only do so much, and it's not to leave them behind, but we can only be the example. That's the best thing that we can do. The best thing that we can do is be excellent and have high standards and live those standards. Because if we're living those standards, if anyone wants to question us, the actions can speak, and we don't have to say much.
Mm-hmm.
And even with my nephew's here, father, 2 years ago, he pulled a gun on me because he's one of those quote unquote tough guys who has a job. Did I freak out? No, because I was, again, trained for that kind of situation.
Wait, this is
De-escalated
your
is
biological father?
their biological dad because he was upset about something, and I was stupid enough to go check on my nephews. So he took it the wrong way, and I'm looking at him literally as I'm speaking to you guys while he's. I mean, when I say he has a gun pointed at me, has a gun pointed at me, calm and collective. I'm looking at him. I'm telling him. I said, why would I come here to stop problems with you, with my nephews in the house? Does that make any sense to you? Why would I do that? You're calling over here, starting problems with my, sister and her boyfriend, and I came here to make sure that you were home with the boys. It took him a good 5-10 minutes to calm down. That's what we deal with. But unfortunately, that's how that is our reality. We're always going to have to prove with our actions. That's the only way. Because yes, we can blame white supremacy. Yes, we can blame other black men. We can blame black women. We can blame. I mean, yes, those are all very real things. But if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And I'm not saying sacrifice yourself. I'm definitely not talking about that. But that's what guys like us go through all the time. And that's why it's imperative that we at least be more public about being excellent and being unapologetic about it. It's cool. Yeah, I mean, with the kids, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I mean, to freaking get an A in algebra. I mean, you do want those Jordans later on, right? Well, yeah, it takes money if you want the Jordans. But if you want more respect, or if you want that nice house in a nice, safe place, that's what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the only way it's going to be done. I mean, for us, it's very simple. It's not even a question. It's common sense to us.
Yeah, a lot of the and this will be closing thoughts. We'll close out at 11:45. A lot of people think that we just do YouTube, and that's it, and then we like we're some kind of like online organization. We're not. YouTube is only 5% of what we do, or 10% of what we do. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes with Black Brain Trust. that, quite frankly, has led to bigger opportunities on multiple continents.
Oh wow.
So we're doing things behind the scenes that a lot of manosphere doesn't even know. They can't even grasp some of the stuff that we're doing. Especially coming within the end of the year and next year and going beyond 2020. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that quite frankly, a lot of these guys are not ready for. To be quite frank with you. So I like everything you had to say. It definitely defines the Black Brain Trust. All of the tenets that goes into this, and I think that we should actually close out, man. Everybody should give their 10-second closing thoughts, and then we can just shut it down.
Well, I'll just say it was a pleasure to speak to you gentlemen and those that were here earlier, and I look forward to doing it again. Thanks.
Dr. Phoenix?
Again, thank you guys for allowing me to be on your platform. As always, Mike, Complex, Brother Uru, and Salchi. If I got your name correct, brother.
Yes.
But again, thank you guys so much. Pleasure as always being able to share what I know.
Thank you. Salchi.
Definitely, it was a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me on. I definitely look forward to future subjects, especially finance. That's my thing. But thank you, appreciate it.
Definitely. All right, if you have not hit the hit the like button so far yet, then please do so, and also share the video if possible. So we are out.